Broken by my master. Teach me, young child of love hereafter. Into the flood again. Same old trick that was back then. So I made a big mistake. Try to see it once my way. Drifting body, its soul desertion. Flying, I get quite the notion. Into the flood again. Same old trick that was back then. So I made a big mistake. Try to see it once my way. Same old trick that was back then. So I made a big mistake. Try to see it once my way. Am I wrong?
Go too far to get home. Am I wrong? Oh, am I wrong? I'm too far to get home. Am I gone? Good. Damn, that was definitely a good cover. I actually thought I was going to be playing because I was setting up for you again. I disappeared. I did disappear. Yeah, this new, like, I was watching live streams yesterday, this week, and one of my favorite live streams was Lord Rapid Jesus, right? And he was complaining that like this new setup is like all messed up for StreamYard, and I'm like, no, it's probably just your headphones and stuff. And today, because I haven't been online for 2 weeks, and thank you for hanging out, man. Like I've been so stressed out because I've got to work. I've got a 22-page script that's like not my creation. That's not based on something I've created. That has to be in by next week because I said I gave my word. And because it's not something that I've come up with my own, I'm writing the script. Everything that's in it is mine, but the character, the way it's coming together, the plots, the concept, the beats, they got to be in it. They're not mine. So I've been really struggling with it. And so every time I'm going, okay, I got to stream tomorrow, I'm changing the stream. Okay, because I got to go back and work this, and I'm getting all messed up in my head because if you're a creative person, you will understand, right? If you have someone who's an artist, will go and go, oh, that sucks. And if you're painting it and you just paint it all over again, blank space. or you just go, oh, that sucks, and you just do a little bit over it. And it's kind of like that when you're writing a comic book or writing a book or whatever, because I know what I'm supposed to have at the end, but I also know what I've done at the first 11 pages, which I just wrote down within like a couple hours because I knew exactly what I wanted. And then it was like, how do I get to what he wants, right? What does my publisher want, right? What does this guy want that's giving me the idea that he wants for this to work? It's a number zero to what could be like this huge event across the entire, studios. Like this, but if that number zero sucks, then it won't, somebody else will have to write it, or it'll just get thrown away for another couple of years, right? And then come back at it. So I've been so distracted with because as you guys know, I have like 6 different projects that I'm working on comic book wise, right? That's 6 different artists, and one of them's got 2 colorists on it as well. So that's like 7 people working on different, projects, and on 6 projects, I should say. And they're all different, like an all ages book, to a teen book, to an adult book, to a mature reader's book, to a sci-fi book, right? And also horror and all that. So they're all different things. And so each week I get a page in, because all these guys, they work full-time or part-time. And so each week I'll get a page from each person, right? Saying, oh, here's this, where I'm going with this page. Is there anything you want changed on this? And I'll go, okay, just this, move this around, and then send it back. And then I'll get changes, and then, okay, we're good to go. And so all that in my head, and I'm like, I'm writing a book, like a story that is totally not mine, but I'm writing it from bottom up. The concept isn't mine, I should say. So yeah, so yesterday I finally worked it out, and I'm like, now I know where I'm going. It was like the first 11 pages have to go to the second half of the book, and then there'll be a finale, right? Resolution. And then the last half that I wrote yesterday has to go to the start. So it's like it's kind of like hold this cut and paste, and it's all messing with my head, because as I usually, when I'm writing a story, I just go, I know how it starts, I know how I'm going to end it, I know where the middle is going to happen, and I'm good to go. So I can just write, and it's easy for me to do. And I've got like hundreds of stories that are either finished, partial, or worked on, or or just sitting there, like 90 pages of work just sitting there waiting to be, to find an artist to work on it, that I haven't touched in one of them I haven't touched in about 20 years, which is like about 450 pages of it in there. It's supposed to be wrote it as a TV series. Anyway, so that's why we've had a 2-week break, and a lot of these stupid schedules changes, which I didn't, I really feel bad about, because I hate it when my favorite, YouTuber, who I enjoy watching, changes their schedules. It doesn't update and stuff, and I'm updating. I'm like, okay, I'll update, and then realize that I got to go and change it now. So I'm sorry for if you guys been following along. That's what the mess has been about today. However, there's been in the last 2 weeks been crazy, right? You guys saw Zelensky and all that. I'm going to look at that when we look at the Europe thing, because I've decided I'm going to look at Asia, Europe, China, Africa in their own little folder of things throughout as we go along, right? I've got so many videos, and it's like I gotta kind of schedule them in a way that is I'm just mainly talking about that on that day. And even though we do like a half an hour of or so of updates on what's happening elsewhere, like headlines, we do like an hour later at the end with the main topic, which is about why I've got an Iranian lady talking about why her country hates Israel and what they've been doing all over the world. Now, a lot of people have misconceptions about why Iran hates Israel, and it's not really what you think it is. And the reason Iran is the way it is today is because of major missteps that America did in the 70s. They put a dictator in without realizing he was a dictator, and then they basically turned it into a advanced country, a progressive democratic country, into a religious zealot of aggressive dictatorship, religious dictatorship. It's kind of like in a way, the Dark Ages were for Europe with the Catholics, right? Everybody who didn't follow the Pope was a heretic, And so, however, in this one, it's worse. You know, it's gotten to a point where if you don't follow, you get picked off the street. If you're a 14-year-old girl, and you get murdered for dancing in the street or singing along to a Western song. So yeah, so when people look at Iran and go, "Oh, what the hell happened?" and we've looked at Iran on this case with especially their treatment of females, right? And and you go, well, why does Iran do what they do to their own people? Forget about Israel, but to their own people. And how come they're funding terrorists around the world, not just over there across in Gaza or with Hezbollah, or or over the Houthis in North Africa, blowing up the trade routes with the ships, with the pirates, where they're shooting missiles at the pirates, going on the ships, killing people on there. It's all funded by Iran, right? Because it's to kind of like mess with the economy, and because they don't care about people, and they're about pushing the Muslim Brotherhood, extremism, Shia religion, the doctrine, the sect of Shiites, which is basically word for word what the Quran says, which is like, okay, we're going to marry little children, little girls, all right, we'll do that. Yeah, that's what it says. As long as they're administrating, you can marry them, right? And there is no age limit. So we'll be looking at those later on. However, today I want to get into what's been happening in our seas here in New Zealand and in Australia, before we get into some New Zealand news and the terrible things that are happening in New Zealand right now, that a lot of people probably don't know about, because our society is just getting as bad as any other body's societies right now because of what's happened in the last few years, and because of almost 8 years of socialism leadership. Because we have prime ministers in New Zealand, we don't have presidents. So our prime minister, Jacinda Ardern, was a diehard socialist, part of the Justin Trudeau network. So if you know what Justin Trudeau's about, they're in the same WEP. Is it WEP? World Economic Forum? WEF, right? The same sort of communist vein. You shall eat bugs and you'll love it. You shall own nothing and you'll love it. That kind of mentality, right? So we had to deal with that for the last 8 years, and we kind of got like a center right government in, and because everybody kind of thinks that if you do anything sort of like conservative, it's evil, and we've gotten to that point. However, our society in New Zealand is kind of trashy at the moment, which is kind of sad, because you look at Australia's in similar vein. So the last couple of weeks, we've had, there's this thing that's happened. And so I thought we'll cross this. It's also happened in New Zealand. So it's Chinese ships in our waters, right? In our waters, basically, as well. And they're not supposed to be in our waters because they're our waters, right? So in the past, we've had like Japanese ships whaling, and we've had to put a stop to that. In our, whales. I mean, why the hell do you want to eat whale meat? There's enough fish, and there's enough chicken, there's enough beef, deer, lamb around, right? Did I say sheep again twice? So why would you want to eat things that delicacy, so-called, like eating turtles? What's the use of eating turtles? What's the use of eating dogs? All right, in Asia they still eat dogs. In China they still eat dogs. In China, in Asia I should say, in Philippines, in probably. I think they said that in Vietnam, and where's the other one? Might be Indonesia, but I know it's in Philippines. I just saw a video yesterday about it. Some dude got caught selling it because it's like rabies, and you're not supposed to sell dog meat, right? Because of rabies, human, you've seen Cujo, right? So that's why people not supposed to eat dog meat. But of course, and there's also horse meat, right? Why would you want to eat horse, right? The only thing I'm okay with is kangaroo, because there's so many of them and actually tastes good. I think I had a back, what they call a back strap on a kangaroo, which is like the eye fillet on a beef, on a bovine. All right, so let's hit this one first.
Lurking in waters off Sydney,
an unusual sight. 3 Chinese military ships travelling further south than they ever have before.
We are aware of this task group. We are monitoring this task group very closely. It is, as I understand it, operating in international waters.
Australia's Defence Department was watching closely, announcing on February 13 the flotilla was under observation.
Both naval.
So here's the thing, right? Sorry about stopping right away, but in the last couple of months, like the last few months since the end of last year, trawlers and Chinese trawlers, right, or hired by Chinese trawlers, these ships that are like basically about to be decommissioned, basically have ended up cutting up the undersea cables for internet in Europe, Norway. And the concern I had, and this is like last week, right, we had was like, well, is this what they're trying to do in our waters? Because why the hell are they here, right? You should be in your own waters, right? Dredging up your own backyard and fishing in your own backyard. Because as we know with these guys, they basically don't care about the size of fish. However, in New Zealand, we do. See, like if you got a snapper fish, you've got like 25 centimeters, I think it is. Anything under that, it's illegal, which means you can get arrested, right, by our MEF officers, which is Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. They will arrest you. They'll take your fish off you. Right. So if you go out fishing, even as a hobbyist, whatever, day fisher, you go out on your boat or on the side of rocks and, popular places, and you come in and officer goes, hey, let's see what you got. And they go, no, I'm not going to shoot. No. Let's see what you got. And if they find out that you've got undersized fish, they'll fine you, which you'll have to pay. If I remember right, you have to, you actually get instant fines, or you get fined to come and pay, show up or whatever, court, if there's major things, right? Or they'll just throw the fish back, throw it back out in the ocean. All right. Bye-bye. You go on, mate. Because see, there are laws to protect our waters because we're trying to protect them for generations to come. And that's why when you have these trawlers in our waters, they don't care about how much or what size of fish they take. They could take tonnages of undersized fish because back home, they don't care about the size of fish. They're like little things or big things. They don't care. And so with us, we need to protect our waters. And then also not that, then the undersea friggin' wires, right? The cables for internet connection. Now, if you cut that, you're going to topple a business of an entire country. No, actually, I shouldn't say business. You're going to topple an entire country. If like say it's going to take you a week to fix it, you're screwed for an entire week. So they could, in that same time, they could come in and start putting up, hacks and stuff like that, viruses into our system. And you wouldn't even know. Now, so I've been following this side of things, and this is why it got me a bit worried. Like, why are the Chinese now in our waters and in Aussies' waters? And I think we're a bit lax, and I think that's really bad if your government being lax about it. So, I mean, I'm not in the government, so I don't know what they're doing, right, behind the scenes. But if I was there, I'd be going, okay, so we know that these Chinese people have been ships have been cutting up wires, right, dropping anchor and, causing the anchor to cut the wires in the deep sea. Now those guys got to spend a couple of weeks to a month trying to fix that. But in that time, their internet's down, their businesses are suffering because there's people aren't, using ATMs or not using FPOS and all that, online shopping, what have you. And that sort of delays, and that's kind of hurts the economy majorly. You saw what happened when we were going through COVID with the lockdowns, right? Small businesses were totally destroyed because all our, and this is what happened with our government, as I mentioned, right? Under the socialist thing, they only backed the big stores, right? Okay, if you're a big major store, yes, you're allowed to open. If you're a small store, you're cut off, right? You can't be open, right? So if you're a takeaway shop, no, you're not allowed to be open. But if you're a McDonald's, yeah, you can. If you're KFC, yeah, you're Pizza Hut, yeah. But not if you're a takeaway shop selling pies, selling chips, hot chips, fish and chips, or even if you're Asian store, right? Fried, what have you, yeah, noodles, whatever. But a lot of businesses went out of, basically shut down and have never got up again because of that. And this basically harmed our economy. And still now, those stores are still closed, right? About 3 years later. It was like 2020, so 5 years later, they're still closed. They've gone, right? So we've got streets that have no, just empty stores sitting around. And that is not good for economy, especially if you're a tourist coming in and you go, well, I want to go and have lunch. Oh, what's the choices? Oh, it's only McDonald's or KFC or Pizza Hut. Well, I can get that back home. I thought I want to try some local cuisine. Oh, well, don't bother, mate. There isn't any. So this sort of thing has really ruined our economy, and it's been really hard to come up. And also everything's gone up, like expensive as hell, right? I've just noticed that my power bill went up $40 in the last 2 months, and I didn't realize it. Going, what's going on with my budgeting? Why am I so behind? Why is my bill so high? And then I realized, yeah, $40 for power just within like a couple of months, crazy, right? But the other thing here is all this stuff is really messing with our, it's keeping people on their toes. And it's like you're actually playing defensive instead of playing offensive. So it really sucks when, you've got this, because we don't really, we're not like anti-China, but we don't, we kind of like a balance sort of thing, right? We don't try to like get in their face, but we also need to get in their face now, especially if they're doing stuff like this.
And Air Force assets have been deployed to make sure that we are monitoring exactly what is occurring here.
For more than a week, the warships quietly made their way down Australia's east coast without incident until February 21, when their silent sail south ended with a bang. About 9:30 in the morning, the ships let loose, carrying out a live fire exercise in the Tasman Sea, 300 nautical miles off the Australian coast. But despite the Defence Force supposedly monitoring them, Australia had no idea the ships had opened fire. Instead, it was the pilot of a commercial passenger jet who first sounded the alarm. At 9:58 a.m, the pilot of Virgin Flight 161 from Sydney to Queenstown heard a warning from the warships over the radio about the live fire exercises. The Virgin pilot immediately relayed the information to Aviation Authority Air Services Australia, which issued an alert to all planes in the area.
The only way you knew about this was because a Virgin pilot heard about it. That's and correct. Called in.
Correct.
20 minutes later, an Emirates flight was also warned by the warships, while a Qantas plane flying...
See, that's us there, right? Christchurch, Queenstown. And by the way, Queenstown's a pretty cool place if you're in Christchurch. New Zealand's a really cool place if you want somewhere, I guess if you've got American dollars, it's 1.6, man. Like your $1 is $1.60 in New Zealand. So if you're looking to travel anywhere, for a decent holiday, people that speak your language, you're not going to, you're not going to find someone, not understanding where you want to go. It's a good place to come to, right? Just like Australia as well. But I mean, I think we're more green. And we have nice beaches. That's one thing really cool. And, if you're into hiking, into nature and all that, and fishing, of course, as I mentioned, it's a good place. But just if you do come over, know what the laws are accordingly, because you don't want to get in trouble as a tourist.
It's behind diverts its path. Dozens of other planes that day also avoid the area.
So you were ahead of defence on this.
I wouldn't say we were ahead.
It's not a...
We became aware of the situation because
Alarmingly, the Australian Defence Force knew nothing until 30 minutes after the Chinese ships began their live fire exercise, when Air Services Australia raised the alarm. A failure slammed from all sides.
Is it the case that Defence was only notified,
basically sleeping on the job, right?
Air Services Australia 28 minutes after the firing window commenced?
Yes. The notification was that call that had made from when the firing window opened, and that in our view, is inadequate notification.
That's not inadequate. It's after it's.
So the thing here is like, these guys are firing on each other or training, whatever you want to call it. Why the hell are they training in our seas? We don't have any defensive training thing with China, right? As far as I know. Let me just find out. Like, where are we? Give me one sec. Does New Zealand and Australia have a defense training? What would you call that? Network? Yes, with China. So what do you call it? Let's carry on with this.
From when the firing window opened, and that, in our view, is inadequate notification.
That's not inadequate. It's after it started.
It was extraordinary that the Prime Minister and Defence Minister told us they'd put in place an unprecedented surveillance operation around these three warships, and then to have the head of our military, Admiral Johnson, tell the Parliament, under oath I might add, that he didn't know whether live firing had happened on the Friday. It's extraordinary to me to have our military say they're doing unprecedented monitoring, but not be able to know if warships fired their weapons or not. That seems to be the lowest bar of capability we should expect.
Exactly. So here's what I found out, right? So you're going to allow me to play? Yeah, I think it's going to chop it up. So here we go. So Australia and New Zealand, like New Zealand and Australia, right? New Zealand and Australia do not maintain formal defense training networks with China. So they shouldn't be in our waters. 100% should be in our waters. We don't have anything to do with them when it comes to defense. Therefore, your warships should not be in us. And here's why I am for us being on the side of America, all right? And why Australia should be on the side of America, because we basically have the same belief system and laws and rights and freedoms, right? So we should be in line with America, and hopefully UK get their shit together and we can be in line with them as well. So here we go. So because at the end of the day, China has been threatening our economy and threatening our Pacific Islanders economy, as we've looked at here, right? With drugs, with mess, and we're going to have a little clip, little news headline, whatever, a little news report about we just busted a huge $1 million meth import, right? Which is coming up next. But like, so yeah, so however, both nations have participated alongside China in multinational naval exercises such as Pakistan's Aman series, for instance, during Aman, whatever that is, 17 in February 2017, and naval assets from Australia, China, and other countries are collaborated to enhance maritime security and foster interoperability among participating navies. Right, so here's the next one. New Zealand and Australia do not maintain formal defense training, right? That was just repeat, I think. Now, the other thing here is, sadly, so in recent years, interactions between China and these nations have been marked by strategic caution, which basically means we really don't want to be working with you, because we find out that you're actually undermining and putting up police stations in Western countries, which is undermining democracies and actually hunting down ex-Chinese democratic voices, right? And hunting down Hong Kong, hunting down former Chinese opposition party members, or so on, people who are like, freedom, people who like, want freedom for their nation from dictatorship. So notably, China has conducted naval exercises. Well, this is recent, right? So, and here's the thing, right? So additionally, China has deployed surveillance ships to monitor exercises like the Talisman Sabre, a biannual joint military exercise between Australia and United States during Talisman Sabre 2023. 2 Chinese Navy spy ships observed the exercise from coastal regions of Northern Territory and Queensland. So if they did this 2 years ago, why went Australia a bit more onto it? And this is why this becomes a real problem, right? As this guy said, why was it half an hour after the fact, after these guys were, firing at each other, missiles at each other, training, whatever you want to call it, then the government and the highest defense minister in the land in Australia says, well, we only found out half an hour ago, after the fact.
Standard international practice is to give 24 to 48 hours notice of any live fire exercise, but China gave Australia and New Zealand none. However,
how's that? You come into our waters and you start firing and you don't give us any warning, and the standard is 24 hours notice. So we can make sure that there's nobody in that area, right? No ships, no private vessels, no cargo ships, no submarines in the water, right? And if you're around our undersea cables, we make sure that our ships there watching and keeping an eye on what you're doing. So this is why I don't trust China for anything they do. And a lot of times, a lot of people are out here on the internet listening to the propaganda. China's going to do this. China's going to do this. China is in a hell of a lot of shit back home. If you've been watching China Observer or any of the other actual reporting out of China that actual people on the street are loading up online, going, "Hey, this is what's happening here," you'll notice that there is in protests against the government in the hundreds of thousands. And because the people haven't been paid for 6 months to a year, so they're living in poverty, hand to mouth, and some of them don't even haven't been paid, so they've been fighting to get their money back, right? If you're an overseas worker, you're lucky if you get it. If you're local, you forget it. It's gone. You'll never get it. The boss has already run off with all the earnings, and he's like, my business is falling down, so I'm going to take whatever I've got in my bank account and I'm leaving. Screw the workers. And this is not just 1 or 2. These are thousands of businesses that are doing this. And the other thing is, right now, Indonesia, we're going to be looking at that when we look at Asia, right? Indonesia's been having a huge anti-China thing going on because Indonesia, there is nickel. Nickel's what they, put into, nickel's very useful in mobile phones. And I don't know much about nickel. I've got to look into this. Well, I'm like, we will talk about that when we get to that in a future stream. But they've basically been polluting and worker safety. 18 people died, right, on one day because the worker safety wasn't followed. Indonesian law wasn't followed. So these Chinese operators, right, factory owners and all that, basically signed up to, bribe, like they did in Africa. We looked at Africa, how China's been bribing the militias to get to the minerals in Africa, right, to the gold and stuff. So they've been doing the same in Indonesia to get to the nickel. And so 50% of the world's nickel reserves is now in the hands of China, right? And this is what's been reported, right? So it could be more, it could be less, but 50% is the going amount right now. So they've been, and Indonesia has quite a lot and they're underground, right? So they basically went in and started bribing all the ministers to do with the land and rights and all that, and selling out their own people who are living there. And so for the future, that's all going to be polluted, all that land. So there's going to be no food growing, no animals be able to live on it. And so therefore you can't have people living on it because it's, and you're going to get diseases, viruses, breaking down your bodies, like Bhopal did in India when that, what's it called? It was like that fertilizer company, right? The American fertilizer company, and that basically fell apart and polluted the entire state of Bhopal. I think it was most of Bhopal, and children who grew up with defects, right? So that was in India. That was only about 1990s or 2000s.
Papua New Guinea was briefed weeks prior.
The fact that
here's the thing, right? So if Papua New Guinea was briefed weeks prior, and this is the thing, So China has been, if we looked at this before, when we looked at Pacific Islands and how China influenced the Pacific Islands, why would Papua New Guinea be briefed weeks ahead? Because they have a deal with China, because China's got a lot of investment in some of the Pacific Islands here, right? And so, of course, you're gonna, your partners. But hey, Australian news is, is very wary of what's going on, and this is what's been worrying a lot of our economies around here, especially Australia and New Zealand, about what's been happening in Fiji and the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Cook Islands, and how they've been taking loans from China to build their infrastructure rather than working on their own, right? Or trying to get investments from people that they can trust. Oh no, we're just going to go to China, they're going to get big loans. Problem with big loans is one day it's going to come in, and if you take big loans and if you can't pay it back, well, we're going to take all your mineral rights.
That gave Australia and New Zealand none. However, Papua New Guinea was briefed weeks prior.
The fact that China's ambassador to PNG in the South Pacific has their office in Canberra, and yet the Chinese ambassador didn't pick up the phone to make a local call to Foreign Affairs or Defence or the Foreign Minister or the Defence Minister, that tells you it was a willful decision to not give Australia advance warning. That's a deliberate act.
China.
Yeah, and I would say that's a act of an enemy, not a friend. So that's why I'm saying, like, you can no longer see, you can no longer treat China with kitty gloves because of all the threats they're doing, right? It's a threat. You come into my water and you start blowing up, doing tests in our water. Go do it in your own waters. Hey, it's a vast friggin' area around your country, right? Right? Because you're like, oh, we own all this in Asia, right? We're going to take over there. But like, how dare you come into our waters? Because if you come into our waters, then we should be able to defend ourselves. But here's the problem with, like, peacetime, right? When it's peacetime, people and countries sleep a lot, right? They're too busy distracted by everything else, while the enemy is at your back door, right? As they say. In this case, at your front door, right? And knocking on it and going, oh, we're just going to throw around some bombs and we don't want to let you know. Or are we going to let off some firecrackers in your yard? Basically, don't worry about your dogs. Yeah, don't. We're not going to tell you to tie your dogs up, but we're just going to keep throwing away firecrackers. That kind of like baseline behavior, right? So it's. I've been watching this like with China for about maybe 2-3 years now, and their action all across the board. Not just like, okay, the poisoning of the foods, cheap products, right? Infected products with bugs sold on Temu, right? Like children's nappies and clothing that blow, bit of flame and catches on fire and like basically burns a baby, right? 80% of a body, that sort of thing, So we're going to be looking at that later. I've got a plan to look at the poisoning and defective materials being sold on Temu, which everybody seems to go, oh, it's cheap, so we might as well buy it. It's like, yeah, but do you want to put your children, your babies, family at harm's way like that for cheap rubbish or products?
Australia has hyped up its concerns, claiming it issued.
And here's the thing, this is what China always does, right? So whenever you go, hey, we don't like what you're doing, they go, oh, but it's your fault. It's gaslighting. They do gaslight a lot.
That's a deliberate act.
China says Australia has hyped up its concerns, claiming it issued repeated safety notices well in advance. And while it may have only been a drill, the danger was still very real.
Chinese were using weapons that had a range up to 50,000 feet in altitude, so that could have placed aircraft at risk.
What we're hearing is how this was all perfectly safe, and the only problem was they didn't give enough advance warning. But there was real danger of a civilian airliner being shot down, because live fire drills can involve not just naval gunfire, but firing high-altitude surface-to-air missiles. So the risk...
So my brain just ticked off, right? So I'm going to show you guys something that just happened this week, last couple of days ago, yesterday even. So this is from Korean News, right? Let me see if I can find it quickly. And this is what live news, right? I mean, live rounds, sorry, apologies. Live rounds. And this is it here, 16 hours ago. Okay. So this is how dangerous this is when this guy's talking about danger when you're using live rounds, right? So this happened in Korea between Korea during a Korean and American training, right? And let me just get this there so we can have the titles and everything. All right. So check this out. This is from Korea News, right? Arirang News, Korea News. Okay. Daily Report.
Frightening accident took place earlier on this Thursday in the city of Pocheon. 2 South Korean fighter jets dropped a series of bombs on a civilian area during a training session, injuring over a dozen people. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has the latest.
Several civilians were injured after bombs fell on a residential area in the northern city of Pocheon, Gyeonggi province on Thursday morning. According to related authorities, bombs had fallen on Pocheon's Dogongri at around 10:04 a.m., destroying several buildings. Bombs came from the joint air and ground force live fire training exercises between South Korea and the U.S. that were being held in connection with the annual springtime exercise, the 2025 Freedom Shield, slated to kick off on March 10th. The exercise involved the Korean Air Force, Army, and U.S. Forces Korea, taking place at the Seungjin Fire Training Field in Pocheon, with the Air Force deploying a total of 13 combat aircraft, including the F-35A, F-15K, KF-16, and FA-50. No fighter jets of U.S. Forces Korea had been deployed. 8 Mk-82 general-purpose bombs were wrongly dropped from 2 KF-16 fighter jets, 4 from each. This confirmed by the Korean Air Force through a text message to reporters. Mk-82 bombs are used to destroy structures such as buildings and bridges, and reportedly have enough power to create a blast crater 8 meters in diameter and 2.4 meters deep. They are dropped using an unguided method rather than a GPS-guided system. The wrongly dropped 8 MK...
So if they had the GPS, they could have like basically moved it somewhere else, right? Like talking about like they had no guided systems on it. So this is what I was thinking. I was like, when I was watching this, couldn't they like turn off, like disconnect like the trigger, whatever mechanism, like, you know, especially in our modern age, right? You can basically go, okay, turn off the firing pin or lock down the explosive area, because we're very advanced, right, when it comes to technology and special weaponry, because most of these technology is actually brought, you know, is created or advanced, right, R&D in military circumstances. So I was thinking, well, couldn't they do that? But these didn't have them. And so was it like 4 of them got dropped, accidentally released, right? So either there was a fault or someone in the cockpit pressed the wrong button, right? The release button instead of like, no, not even touching that. So they might finger slip, but two doing it at the same time, that's crazy. That's like, it's not like, what is it called? Accidental, right? Doesn't seem accidental if there's 2 of them doing it. So there seems like there must be something wrong with these, either the locking mechanism, because that's dangerous, because that could have been like a lot of people injured, right? But nobody has been reported as being like killed or anything like that at this moment.
82 general-purpose bombs landed outside a shooting range in a non-designated area. The impact points of all 8 bombs were confirmed, and the Air Force said there were no unexploded bombs. It has reportedly established an accident response committee to investigate the exact circumstances of the incident and assess the damage. The Korean Air Force added that it deeply regrets the civilian damage caused by the bomb drop and expressed sincere wishes for the quick recovery of the injured. It further noted that necessary measures, including compensation, would actively be carried out. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Right. So let's get back to the other one. This is why I'm saying why you need 24-hour notice about what's going to happen, and if there's any sort of if you got these ships out here basically blasting away at each other. Let's go back to this gentleman. Here we go. Especially when you got planes up there, right? That these missiles can reach.
Advance warning, but there was real danger of a civilian airliner being shot down because live fire drills can involve not just naval gunfire, but firing high-altitude surface-to-air missiles. So the risk was real. If an airliner had been shot down, it wouldn't have been one death, it would have been everybody on board.
While the government vowed to seek answers,
we do have concerns about the transparency associated with this and the notice, and I certainly will be having a discussion with Foreign Minister Wang about that.
I don't think we have a satisfactory answer from China as to the question of the notice.
The ship's location means China technically broke no rules.
They are in international waters. They are completely within the bounds of international law.
Normally, navies conduct live fire drills on designated training ranges in chunks of water or in parts of the world's oceans where they aren't putting at risk civilian airliners flying overhead or civilian ships blundering into the area. And normally, navies give advance notice. The Chinese did none of those things.
Nor they will.
And it came just days after another alarming incident. On February 11, an RAAF Poseidon jet was conducting routine surveillance of the South China Sea when it was challenged by two Chinese J-16 jets. One of them releasing flares just 30 metres away from the Australian plane.
The proximity of the Chinese Air Force plane was so close that there's no way you could have maintained control over those flares.
There were a dozen Air Force personnel on board, but thankfully no one was injured.
There was danger, and had those flares hit the P-8, there was the potential for significant damage to our aircraft.
Had those flares gone into the intake of that Poseidon, we could have lost the aircraft and the crew, about 12 people. So at the one hand, they are undertaking very unprofessional and dangerous and provocative and aggressive activities in the South China Sea. At the same time, they're deploying a very powerful naval task force close to Australia and now conducting live fire exercises. This is all about signalling. This is not just a naval operation per se to train the Chinese Navy. This is about signalling to us China's intent to be the dominant actor in our region.
These close calls, considered deliberate and calculated shows of force from an increasingly arrogant Beijing.
They are practicing and rehearsing, and they are collecting.
What do you think they're rehearsing for? Land strike missions against Australian infrastructure and bases. We should be worried about the long-term implications of what's going on.
The federal government believes China not only wants to show its military reach, but normalise its presence in the region. Others think there might be a more sinister intent.
At a pure safety level, we should be concerned. At a strategic level, we should also be concerned because this exercise, this deployment is not just normal. This is about strategic signalling from Beijing to Canberra, saying to us that China can project its maritime power and its naval capabilities whenever it wants, wherever it wants. It can do whatever it wants.
Raising serious questions about Australia's readiness to respond to a military threat.
For about 10 years now, it's been in every government document of both sides of government that Australia's distance and location no longer protects us from military threat. These warships...
That's the same with New Zealand, right? That's why they're challenging our waters and challenging our, what we're doing. Because here, all across here is the Pacific Islands, right? They've already bought up these guys' allegiance to China with loans and stuff. And across here, Fiji's right here, right? And over here, I think is that Tokelau, or is it Samoa? I can't remember who that is there. But this is Indonesia. Too close to call, man. I think playing blasé or playing catch up with China is not the way forward anymore. And this is why I'm saying, like, New Zealand should get in line with America, because they're they're a superpower. They speak our language. We have aligned beliefs, right? When it comes to, like, freedoms and laws and rights, right? Because in China, there are no rights, right? You have no rights in China. So how, like, in Korea, we just saw that video about how in Korea the army said, we're gonna make sure. Whenever I press that one, I need to get rid of that one. It always makes me disappear. There's all these windows there on this new setup for StreamYard. So yeah, I think we should stop playing kitty gloves with China, because from what I've seen for the last 3 years, they've become more and more aggressive. Like, after they took over Hong Kong, it's like, okay, you gave us one. Well, we want Taiwan now. Oh, you got Taiwan. Oh, now we want Philippines. Right? So basically, China has been undermining Asian countries, South American countries, South Africa, right? And Africa, North Africa, undermining that with the mineral rights and stuff, with huge billion-dollar loans, which they'll collect. And there's a problem with, like, loans and stuff, is that one day somebody will come to collect. And if you're doing it with China, they've already started collecting. And, the problem is that when you're not able to pay, they'll take whatever else you got. And mainly, they'll take land. Because all China is interested in is minerals, land, and resources that you have to offer. You're fishing, because they've got billions of people, right? Like, is it like about 2 billion, or is it 1 billion in China, right? Let me just check that. What's the population of China right now? What's the population of mainland China? All right. What are you saying to me? As of at the end of 2024, mainland China was approximately 1.4 billion people, right? Marking a decrease of 1.39 million from the previous year, which is because they're not having kids. As we watched, we talked about on this channel before, not only are they not having kids, they're also not getting married. And they're not looking to get married. They're not looking to have kids, because it's so they're so poor now that they can't even afford to have children or to get married. Because to get married, you have to have a good job, and you have to have a house or apartment that's paid off, right? And you can't really do that. And then also, you got to raise a child, and you got to have a car. And this is what's the demand has been, And so young guys are going, well, screw this. So 100 million of them going, yeah, I'm not going to get married. I don't even want to be in a relationship. That's how bad it's gotten in China. And yet people going, oh yeah, China's going to surpass the world. But, like, China's just saber rattling, but also very aggressive, as we just saw in our waters in Australia and New Zealand. But as I mentioned before, and we looked at that in the previous, when we looked at Pacific and influences there, how they've been basically just undermining and trying to get into, into politics, influence politics through bribery. Now, I just want to bring up this 36 kilograms of mess that was just found at customs in Auckland, our international airport. So yeah, here we go. So let me just get this title up. Okay. So Auckland is our main entry into New Zealand, right? The airport there, it's an international airport. Anybody who basically comes into New Zealand goes there, unless they want to go to the South Island, which is in Christchurch and so on. But mainly, most people come into Auckland because Auckland's the sunny part of New Zealand. You know, it's like the North Island. So, you know, you basically, most people, there's more people from the South Pacific living in Auckland than actually in the South Pacific Islands, right? Because that's how, you know, and this is why like a lot of people are in a way not very happy about our unrestricted immigration, because, you know, in the early days, in the 80s, it was okay to have like open borders, you know, when it comes to like immigrants or migrants. However, now it's gotten to a point where you need to like kind of go, okay, there's enough of you here. We don't need more, because, you know, there's a lot. And it would be a good thing if you stayed in your own countries and helped your own countries, because what's happened is all the brains from the Pacific Islands have gone overseas, right? And a lot of them come into New Zealand and then they move over to Aussie. And when you take the brains away and then you only leave like the average people back in their country, they're easily influenced by people with brains. Or with what would you call that? Like yeah, intellectual people, right? Or people who are like a bit more legal minded, and so they get easily influenced by people from China with bribery. And so now the poor people that are left behind having their land sold off from under them because the smart people are already gone. We saw this happen in Fiji during George Speight coup, right? And we saw that happen during the 1980s. So the 2000s and then the 1980s, we had that with happen with Rabuka, who is actually a prime minister now. Weird, right? A guy who did who actually did a coup, which took a lot of the brains and smart and rich people away out of Fiji, and then 20 years later, another indigenous Fijian from Australia came in and did the same thing, and another lot of smart brain intellectual people with lots of money left, right? And this is what happens whenever you know, people try to topple countries. People with the brains will leave. And so this is what you're seeing in the Pacific, right? A lot of people with the brains and with you know, with talent and skill will leave, and they'll get hired by overseas people. We see a lot of that with like sports and so on. But not only that, but like IT, engineering, you know, they'll leave as well. And so you end up with just the average Joe Blow back in the islands, who are easily influenced by whatever the freaking prime minister says or the minister says, or, you know, whatever. And so that's been happening in the Pacific Islands. Now, let's have a look at this. That's a lot of kgs of maths. So this came in, I only found this about, was it yesterday or something? So this is on the 6th. So what are we? Today's the 7th. So yeah, yesterday. Okay, so Customs seizes 36 kilograms of meth in unaccompanied bags at Auckland airport. Right, after the seize over, right, we just said from US flight. Now, I was watching a video while I was washing dishes just before it came on. Excuse me. Sprite, or was it lemonade? Watching a clip about tariffs in Canada, and the gentleman was basically talking about how like it's affecting, you know, printing costs and sales and stuff like that because of 25% tariff that Trump's put, you know, with his government has put on Canada, because how Canada has let drugs like meth and fentanyl come into America for years, right? Which has ruined American lives and killed a lot of them. Addiction and so on. And anything around drugs, there's always crime. Because when you're addicted, and I know people like that, you know, locally who've, you know, in like, here in New Zealand, and been around them, and I'm like, yo, I want to stay the hell away from that. Who get addicted to this sort of stuff, and when their money runs out, they start stealing, crime. When they they'll go rob someone, or if there's somebody in that house, they'll injure them to steal their money. Hey, where do you, right? And then people die, people get injured. So when you let that into somebody's country, and you let it all for years and years, that exemplifies the damage and the pain on that country's people. And this is why the same thing with with the illegal migrants coming in from Mexico and also from Canada, right? People jumping on the ship, getting into Canada, using Canada to get through into thing, right? And the border patrol is just going, oh yeah, that's fine. So so if you're doing that in my country, I'm going to go F you. You're going to get tariffs. You're going to get whatever to stop you and get you into line to protect the border, so that my people in my country are not being affected by you. And this is what, and this is the thing here, right? So you got 36 kgs of street value of $13.5 million, right? Right? Causing 3 times, is that 3 times? Yeah, almost 3 times in harm. Right? $37.9 million in harm. This is the fourth, right? This is the fourth major drug seizure at Auckland Airport in the past 3 months, right? And we just into the first week. Yeah, we're 7th today in New Zealand. So you guys are probably 6th if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, but today's the 7th. So yeah, first week of March, right? So it's only been like 2 months and a week, and we've already had 4 major, right, seizures of this magnitude. Right, so it's going here. Customs officers on a flight from the United States. 2 bags that arrived at Auckland Airport on Wednesday, March 5th, on a flight from LAX, and were referred to New Zealand Customs for further inspection. Now, imagine if that were in court. These 2 bags were in court. This would destroy so many lives in New Zealand. And this is why I don't give a F about what happens in Canada with the tariffs. I don't care about anywhere that's getting, like Mexico, where it's getting tariffs. As far as I'm concerned, if you're harming my country, then you pay. Right? So if Australia was doing that to New Zealand, I'll be saying the same thing. And if we were doing that to Australia, I'll be saying the same thing. Why the hell are you doing that? Strengthen your borders. So I'm glad that that our customs are onto it, because we're realizing that, hey, you're not going to be able to get into America now because of the tariffs and all that, and borders are tightening. Well, let's send it elsewhere. New Zealand, Australia, and the Pacific Islands. And we saw a lot of that happening with the Chinese. We looked at that earlier last year when the Chinese were doing that in Fiji, right? Like totally, like imagine like a little island like Fiji. They're using Fiji as a drop, like a connecting thing, so that they bring it over onto the ships through the sea into Fiji, and then they'll get onto ships and bring it to Australia and New Zealand. So this one basically directly to us, right? So a search of both bags identified several plastic wrapped vacuum sealed parcels. A search of both bags identified several plastic wrapped vacuum sealed parcels. Testing of the substance inside the parcel returned positive for meth. Right? Look at that, army bags. Three people were caught attempting. Okay, let's go back up. So here we go. Customs Auckland's airport manager, Paul Williams, said this was another good example of collaboration within the aviation sector to combat drug smuggling. Criminals are trying to get drugs through our airport in increasingly large volumes, but our intelligence and partnership networks are alert to their tactics. I actually looked at how they do this with the Mexican border. I have been doing this with the Mexican border and documentaries on it. Man, it's crazy, dude. Like, you cannot ever be anti border control after watching that. You'll be like, yeah, please, more border control. I've always been for border control for our, for New Zealand, for Fiji, for anyone, because you want to protect your country. You don't want the criminals getting this and then putting it out into the public, right? Into the community, and destroying lives, getting people addicted. First one's always free, like they say, right? And then you're addicted, then you're screwed. And I'm going to show you a next report about what happens on the street when this gets on the street. Okay, so I'll let you the text. Customs will continue to work across the industry to secure the supply chain. Our team will act swiftly to identify and stop risk as part of our focus of protecting the border. See, the criminals will go, oh yeah, but it's not harming anybody, bro. We need the money. It helps the community. It doesn't help the community. What helps the community is education and jobs. Teaching your kids to stay the hell away from drugs. And I don't want to sound like a 90s freaking Nancy Reagan thing. Is it Nancy Reagan or was it somebody else? Don't do drugs. But the whole thing here is, if you really care about people, you will keep, if you care about your community, I should say, you would keep the shit out of your community. And if you still, and the only thing is, this is why I don't like gangs, because they're only, rather than working together to actually do better for their community and themselves, they just do crime. That's the way. That's the only thing they know. It's like, we'll just take cheap cuts. Yet they put their own families at risk. They've put their communities at risk because they want a quick buck and without doing the hard work. However, if they use the intelligence they have to actually do real work, and leave the crime life behind, they'll be so much successful and so safe for their own families and their communities. The methamphetamine is estimated to have a street value, as we said, causing 37.9 million in harm across New Zealand. Okay, this is the fourth one. We just said that in 3 months. Well, 2 months, really, in a week. 3 people were caught attempting to smuggle 10 million of meth in luggage in 2 separate cases, right? So 2 men, a 33-year-old and a 39-year-old, arrived in the country on a flight from Canada. Did we not just mention Canada? I didn't even know that was about Canada. Hello, Canada. See? So screw you, Canada. You let people come from your country with drugs into our country. So screw you. Screw your border. Screw your customs. And this is why I'm okay with Trump going, yeah, you guys have been screwing with us. And now Canada's screwing with us. So, screw you, Trudeau. So customs officer questioned them, and officers questioned them and searched their bags, finding 20.44 kgs. I don't know how much. Wait, hold on. How much is this in pounds for those, for our northern cousins? How much? In pounds, because I know you guys do the old matrix system. That's 45 pounds, right? So that's 45 pounds for you, northern cousins. That's how much these 2 guys brought of meth into our country from Canada. So yeah, so the border's kind of like it's been closed down for America. Oh yeah, let's go into Australia and Canada. I mean, Australia and New Zealand now. Yeah, let's go ruin their people. So thank you, Canada. You know, your customs and your your border control for opening your borders to New Zealand for drugs now. Thank you very much. That's a hell of a lot. Because I know, like, was it like a pound of butter is about this big for us New Zealand, right? So it's about 500 grams. So what is that? There's like a 40, could possibly be like, is that 40 of those, 45 of those? Just trying to figure out. It'll be like probably a 40-liter container, cubic container. Yeah, I'm just looking at these containers of Legos here. Yeah, that's crazy. And this is Canada doing it to a doing to a fellow ally, right? Oh yeah, let's just let these 10 kgs, 40 kgs, 20 kgs of drugs into their country. I'd be ashamed if our customs had allowed that to happen, and we're like not checking. That's a lot. That's a lot to let go past, right? The bag tag was to the 49 linked to the bag tag was linked to the 39-year-old. And then you got the next day, a 59-year-old woman, a 59-year-old woman, unrelated to two men, arrived from Honolulu, U.S. and U.S. right? Oh, Canada. I mean Hawaii, right? Honolulu, Hawaii, U.S. Because it's a United States state, right? And officers who searched her bag found her clothing was stiff to the touch. Border testing showed meths had been soaked into the fabrics. On January 20, a 24-year-old American woman was caught trying to smuggle an estimated 31 kilos worth of meths. So what is 31 kilos? 50, if 20 is 40, so 30 would be 60 or something? No, that would triple that. No, so it'll be like 50 pounds, right? It'll be 50 pounds. These guys are not. They're basically trying to ruin a country with drugs, addiction, and crime. So they were in suitcases, right? 31 kilos. The seized meth equated to close to 1.6 million individual doses. Do you get that? That's a fifth of our country. Because we're about 5.5 million. It's about a fifth of our country. And that would go, that $11 million made from that would go to the criminals. And this is why I don't give a fuck about Canada. I don't give a fuck about Mexico, excuse my language. But seriously, I don't give a crap about your guys' tariffs and all that. Because you're basically, especially with this from Canada, right? And America and Honolulu, right? These are coming from American and Canadian countries. If you people in your countries in Hawaii, America, LAX, right? LA, and Canada, Toronto, are willing to let drugs pass through your customs into our country, onto planes coming to our country, then you are basically an enemy of our country. because that is saying that you are willing to put our nation at jeopardy at the hands of criminals and destroy the lives of our youth and young people, our women and children. And then that also means once they're addicted, they will go on to harm our women and children and elderly. Now, I want to bring this up. The Mongrel Mob is a Maori gang in New Zealand. Indigenous Maori run gang. One of the most brutal. All right. And this is what happened to this young 14-year-old girl. Let me get this link so I don't forget this later. I keep meaning to timestamp all the things, but I get distracted by all the work I got to do and I never get around to it. But they're there, so you guys can always, click on it and get, check it out for yourselves. Because all this channel is really about is like to make you aware and research for yourself, right? So let's look at this. This is from 5th, 3 days ago. 2 days ago? 7, 6, 5. Yeah, about 3 days ago. From New Zealand Herald, Belinda Feek reporting. Mongrel mob members Raumoko Diapa Raniera Daniels Rongunui, terrifying rape of teen girl. And our country is basically, we did a thing about this, about gang patches a little while back, last year, when they're bringing it to make it illegal to wear gang patches. See, the thing about gang patches, it's intimidation and as a branding for a crime thing. See, there was this thing about okay, it's the uniform of criminality. And so there's this thing about I'm not a hardcore what is it called, censorship person. I don't like censorship, but I'm also not 100% against all censorship either. There are certain things you gotta censor, right? According to what is there. So something like this, because look, it's got a SWAT sticker on it, right? So forth. So we know it's not it's aligned with some pretty dodgy stuff, right? Not to mention the fact it's a criminal gang. So the pair of Mongrel Mob gang members, appeared in the Hamilton District Court. Hamilton's about an hour and a half out of Auckland, going south. Auckland, as we talked about, is the main city and entry into airport into New Zealand, right? Almost like a second capital of New Zealand, capital being Wellington, which is where the Beehive is, which is the government building in Wellington, that is. All right. For sentencing on Tuesday by Judge Thomas Ingram, who said he couldn't imagine the terror that woman must have. She's not a woman, she's a 14-year-old girl. Child. A woman is over 18. We class it, as an 18-year-old, you have rights to be treated as an adult. This is a child, 14-year-old child. I hate it when these people do that. I really hate it when they try to muddy the waters by calling a child a woman. Because what that does, it puts into the minds, oh, well, she's a woman. She should be able to handle it. She's not. No, she's a 14-year-old girl. Warning. All right, hold on. We're getting some muddy waters here, so we got to put on this. Now that that's there, oops, let's do this. All right. Warning, this story contains details that may be distressing to for some readers. I think it's distressing to all of us when you find out what happened to this girl. Especially if you're a normal human being and not a criminal, not a disgusting, despicable person like these two bastards. A teen girl, right? So look, the reporter is calling her a teen girl, but the justice is calling her a woman. A teen girl raped by two mongrel mob gang members was not respected as a human being throughout her terrifying ordeal. I'm just going to call it RT and RJ, all right? RT and RJ, who are both heavily tattooed, including on their photos, gave the 14-year-old no choice as they separately entered her motel room and subjected her to multiple indecencies before raping her. The pair arrived in Hamilton District Court for sentencing on Tuesday by Judge Thomas Ingram, who said he couldn't imagine the terror she must have felt that night. Which is weird because yeah, see, this is weird. Like here she goes, the terror that woman must have felt that night. And here, right, the terror she must have felt that night. So there's no woman there. It's like, this sort of shit annoys me because, like I said, it muddies the water, right, when it comes to especially sex crimes or criminal things. Let me zoom in a bit more. All right, here we go. She was given no choice. She was not respected as a human being. So it's like you're paraphrasing, right? I mean, not cutting out, shorting. Tayeb 36 and Daniels Ronganui 26 admitted charges of rape and sexual violation by unlawful sexual connection midway during their trial, but before the victim had to give evidence last month. Excuse me. And this is what I also don't like. Judge Ingram agreed to give them a 15% discount for their pleas as it saved the victim from having to relive our ordeal, along with 15% for background factors and drug addiction before jailing them. Oh, for fuck's sake. Can we not punish crime for crime? This is the other thing I'm saying, like our society is getting fucked up, is because now we're giving them leeway. Oh, we're going to give you less time because, you're going to agree to it. I'd be like we're going to give you more time if you don't plead guilty, mate. Because we know you're guilty, so it's up to you. And because you're addicted to drugs, I'm going to give you another 15 because you should have got clean by that. You shouldn't have done this. It's on you to behave like an animal, not on society. It's not society's fault that you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, whatever the fuck it is. Especially in this case, it's meds. It's not society's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not your family's fault. It's your fault. Take responsibility for your own actions. Individual responsibilities. Why should society and the innocents have to put up with your shit? Because you won't control your own self. Which reminds me, we've got another terrible story after this as well. Yeah. Before jailing them both for 9 years and 9 months. See, for me, like child abuse and stuff like that, which falls under for me. I'm all for wood chippers or life in prison. I think life in prison is pretty shit because, like, that means they got to live off taxpayers, society's earnings. They got to be housed. Their water bill, power bills all paid, and food bills all paid by society, right? For basically raping someone, a 14-year-old girl, a child. Tutu basically means mess around, by the way, for those, who don't speak Maori or don't understand New Zealand, indigenous language. So why do you have to mess with me, right, is what she's trying to say here. Why do you have to tutu me? But in this case, it means worse, right? Why do you have to fuck with me? None of the men knew the victim, who was visiting Hamilton in October 2022. And of course, that's around just at the end of COVID. Taipa and Daniels turned up to the Ashwood Manor Motel and told the victim and her cousin that they were using the room and to go and clean it up. When inside, they told the victim's older cousin to go outside and to see if the police were coming. Weird. It was then Daniels asked the victim if she showered before one of the men pulled out a glass pipe. And this is how this all fucking ties in. With America and Canada and China bringing mess into our country, or the gangs cooking it up, from the previous story. Pulled out a glass pipe and started smoking mess. And asked if she wanted some. The girl said no, and asked again by Daniels. She again said no. Before he said if she didn't have any, he would stab her in the face. Do you see why now I have no fucking, sympathy for American customs or Chinese customs, or sorry, not Chinese, for Canadian customs or Hawaiian customs? Because those meths go straight into the hands of criminals and gangs, especially gangs, because they have all the connections, right? To go out there and sell it to the community. They then told her to get on the bed and take her pants off, but she refused. They then swore at her before the victim's nan came into the room. The grandmother, the nan is a grandmother, right? Shortly afterwards, the pair left, but Taipa returned about midnight and forced the girl to smoke cannabis. Right, so basically nothing happened here because the grandmother came. So what I'm trying to piece this together as to who it is. So I think these people, like the cousin, right, the nan, I think they own the motel in Ashford, right? And that's why the nan was there. And the older cousin was there because she was visiting. This 14-year-old girl was visiting her family, her extended family, right? Where did we go? What did I miss? Oh, yeah, I went up. Hold on. Right, so Nan came into the room. So they basically took off, right? Because her screams, because they started swearing with her. They're not going to be swearing quietly because they wanted to rape her. And she's like, no, take your pants off. No. So the Nan comes in. Shortly afterwards, the pair left Taipa. But Taipa, who's Taipa? He's the younger one, right? Where is he? On it. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Taipa's the older one. So the older one returned, right? Where are we? Here we go. Yeah. So the older one, Taipa, returned about midnight and forced the girl to smoke cannabis. Weed for you guys, on the street level. Taipa then started talking about threesomes, but the girl said they don't do that stuff around here. Remember, the girl isn't giving saying this. They're saying this in court. So the guy is saying that, right? Because he's giving evidence to himself, right, in court. Because the girl isn't up. Because because so that she wouldn't go through this, he dropped. The judge said he would drop, the years they would be in jail. The victim's cousin got up and went to the bathroom before Taipa asked if he could sexually assault her. She said no before saying, "Why do you have to tutu me? I'm only 14. Do you know how old you are?" He's 36 years old, and she's only a 14-year-old girl. She started to move away from him, and she said, She started to move away from him, and he said if she wouldn't let him, he would stab both of them. That's the 14-year-old girl and her cousin. When he was about to rape her, the victim said she was a virgin, and he replied, "Yeah, all good." And as she protested, he said, "Fuck up, you dirty bitch." After an approximate 2-hour ordeal, 36-year-old Taipa left. But about 4 a.m., Daniels turned up and also raped her before leaving about 20 minutes later. Do you get what's happening here? 2 Maori gang members raped another Maori girl, 14-year-old, with the threat that if they didn't rape her, they would, the 36-year-old would kill both of them, her and her cousin. And then he went away after raping her for 2 hours, told his mate, Daniels, 26-year-old, who then turned up and said, hey, bro, go and have a good time. I already did it, and I softened her up for you, mate. Go take your turn. She won't resist now because she's already been fucked up. She doesn't want to say no now, mate. So Daniels turns up, the 26-year-old, and rapes her for 20 minutes. And this is why I always like to say about how when you fuck with kids, you fuck their whole entire life, not just at one time. And this is why wood chippers are good. And I pray, and I'm not a praying person, but I hope that when the inmates in jail find out about what these two did, that they don't last long. There's my hope and my expectation. And this is, my dear friends, why, I have no love for, soft borders, for letting drugs and methamphetamine into our country. And why I have no soft spot or no percentages given, for telling the truth. I rather you get fined more for not telling the truth, or spend more time in jail for not telling the truth. And this is the next part. There's going to be lifelong issues for her, and that's what happens. Violence and sex crimes are lifelong. She went through 2 hours and 20 minutes of torture and hell, all the while thinking that she's going to get murdered and her cousin's going to get murdered unless she lets them do this to her. In a discussion about jail starting point with Taipa's counsel, Fraser King, Judge Ingram said, there is going to be a lifelong trust issues for her with all men. And it's true. I have been around rape victims who have had this problem. A lot of lesbians, a high percentage of them have been raped, which is why they become lesbian. Not all, but high percentage. You ask them, you know, what made you, you know, what made you, you know, decide to, yeah, be into same sex, and they'll tell you. And then it's the same with gay guys, right? They'll tell you, well, why are you gay? And they'll say, like, well, because of females. Same deal. King tried to urge the judge to go, yeah, look at this asshole here. That's the rapist counsel, Fraser King. I wonder how he would feel if that was his niece, daughter, extended family member, and this happened to her. Would he urge the judge to go with a 9-year start point plus an extra year for second charge? I know if I was there, I would be like, yeah, judge, they're guilty, so do whatever the fuck you want. But then again, I mean, the defense, right? I'll be like, just throw the book at them. But yeah, at this point, you like, you know, at this point, I couldn't care what the hell happened to these two assholes. And by the way, this is the gang culture. Any gang culture. Remember when, like, I mean, a lot of people like poo-poo Trump and all, like, you know, MS-13 and all these people. I've actually looked at that shit like about maybe 3-4 years ago about all this stuff, or MS-13, whatever it's called, and what they do to people. And I think a lot of people don't really understand the reality of this sort of culture, the gang culture and stuff, because they've never been around it. I've been around people in gangs, but I've never seen it firsthand. But I understand it now because I've read enough and I've looked into enough cases and watched enough documentaries to know about that, right? What happens. I think it's lazy when people, it's only lazy people who don't know that, because, and then speak on like, on the side of like, oh, but you know, it's because they're poor, you know, it's because of society. So that it's a choice to be in a gang. It's a choice to do meth. It's a choice to become an alcoholic, right? It's a choice to be addicted. It's a choice to do crime, to put your life above anybody else's life. It's your choice. Individual choice. So you can read the rest there. I think these guys should have wood chipped. Should have been wood chipped. Now, the next story, and then we'll move on to the main topic, is this. And it's really bad. All right, here we go. This is in the UK. We're still under the warning, so here's another warning.
What's your name, sir? Pardon? Hao.
And your surname?
Yes,
huh? And your surname?
Family name, Zhou.
Pardon?
Zhou.
You got any ID on you at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you show me your ID, please, just so we can confirm who you are? Is there anybody else in?
I thought it was done.
Sorry? Say that again?
I remember months.
Okay, sir, I'm arresting you on suspicion of rape, okay? Because it is alleged that on the 14th of November last year, you have vaginally raped a female at this address, okay? You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Your arrest is necessary for a prompt and effective investigation, okay? Your time of, let me finish, your time of arrest is now 1:53. Come on, come out so I can check the...
Just allow something cover here.
Can I...
Want a jacket or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that. If you shuffle out. Yeah, can you...
I'm going to search the search feature. I don't have anything.
We already have 8 different videos of you raping at least 8 different victims.
我们看到的内容呢，已经至少有8条录像片，录像显示你是对这些女孩子强奸的。
This includes the 2 from your phone that we discussed with you upon your last arrest.
就其中包括8条里面，其中包括2条我们上一次跟你说过的那个强奸女孩子的录像。
As they've said, some of the things seized include 2 hard drives of over 2 terabytes each.
还有你还有什么2个 hard drive， 好像这些电子器械都在我们那里。
How many videos do you have?
你总共有多少条片呢？拍的
No comments.
How many victims are there?
Look at this asshole. He understands English. See, I fucking hate this. If you're studying overseas, you should know how to speak English, and you do know how to speak English. Because otherwise, how the fuck did you get to Britain to study for a PhD, level education? This is why I despise migrants who abuse the system of their host countries. I totally fucking despise them. You have no idea how much I despise migrants or immigrants who do this. Oh, but Ara, you're a migrant yourself. You're an immigrant yourself. Yeah, I fucking learned the language. I had to go to special classes to learn how to read English when I arrived here when I was 7 years old because I didn't know how to speak English. My mum paid my neighbor to teach me how to read with little children's books like what the hell was it? Clifford the Red Dog, right? I can remember it, right? Which basically turned me into loving reading, and literature, and turned me into being a writer because of that amazing time I just spent with my neighbor. She was taking me through, teaching me how to read English, because in Fiji, I didn't even know, which is weird. Like I didn't my education was so screwed up. I didn't even know how to read Hindi. I don't even have any memories of being able to read Hindi. But here because I came to New Zealand, which spoke English, right, as the main language, I had to learn to read, I knew how to write English, but enough, right? Because I was 7 years old, so I already had 2 years of primary school education. But I also needed to learn how to speak and understand what was being said as a 7-year-old. So I despise migrants who stay in their little fucking communities, be it Chinese, be it Asian, be it Indian, be it Tamil, be it fucking Islander, and they don't learn the language of the country they're in, who's going to spend their entire life living in. I really despise it, honestly. I mean, I fucking despise it. I hate this sort of bullshit because it means that you're lazy and that you don't really care about the country you're in enough to learn how to speak the language to communicate with people that are outside your culture or your race. I really do. If you come to New Zealand, you should take special, if you don't know how to speak and you're willing to live here, because you are coming to be here, not we haven't asked you to come here. You are coming of your own accord to live in New Zealand, just as well as my mum did and I did, right? And my mum brought me over back in the 80s. She she had to learn to be able to go and work, because I mean she knew how to speak English because she worked at a restaurant, in a Chinese restaurant in Fiji, right? She was able to speak English because she had to communicate with Fijians, right? And who speak Fijian, right? And she's an Indian, so she had to learn how to speak. She spoke Indian and I guess a little bit of Fijian, but English as a 20-year-old. I guess at that point she was 28 because mom had me when I was 20. All right. So if my mom is willing to, and if I'm willing to learn the language, why the fuck aren't you willing to learn the language? No comment. No English. It's bullshit cop out. Look at this asshole who raped 10 women and has terabytes worth of footage that he recorded of him raping. He's a Chinese exchange student, right? Who raped a predator in the UK from China. And we just found out like he isn't even being deported out of the country. So now he said he has to suck up UK's resources while he's in jail and the court system. He should have been deported straight away and like his blacklisted and never allowed to enter any country once he sets foot in China. Any country, because he's a monster. He's a predator. He's a serial rapist who recorded his crimes.
不知道的。
有多少个受害人？
No comments. How long has this been going on for?
你这些所
See, can you hear that? This is what pissed me off. Look at how perfect his English is when he says no comment.
你这些所为，进行了多长时间？
No comments.
See, even the accent is so clear, right? There's no Chinese hint of Chinese Mandarin or Cantonese, accent in there. This is a guy who's got a PhD, studying for PhD, right? So he's already been through all this. His years of being able to get to this level, right? Of course he knows how to speak English. How the fuck is he and understand English? How the fuck is he going to sit in class at this high level university education and not be under it? This is all about using up resources and trying to, feel sorry for me because I don't understand. Because later on they go, I didn't understand. It was explained to me properly. So the police has to pay an interpreter who can speak Mandarin or Cantonese to come and interpret, that's extra resources that is being used for this criminal.
Did this start when you moved to the UK?
你来英国的时候就已经开始做这件事情了吧？
No comments. Did it start before that?
还是你来英国以前就已经开始了？
No comments. When was the first time it happened?
第一次发生的时候是在哪里发生的？
No comments.
At this point, if you've got all the evidence, you just basically put him on a flight back to China. Hand him over to the police. Say, how we bring him over? Here's your problem now. End of story. And then get onto immigration, get onto customs, get onto all your police networks and go Interpol, international police, and reach out to all countries and go, this is the name of this person. This is the DNA we got of him, his fingerprints. These are the photos. And if you let him into your country, it's on you. And the blood of all those people that he will rape, because he's a serial rapist, is on you. See, the problem nowadays, we've gotten to where we've become really soft on rape and violent crime because there's too many fucking leftists in government and in places of power because they are more about feelings than about actual crime and harm done to people.
Would you say you're unable to stop?
你会不会停止做这件事情啊？
No comments. You say you're addicted.
If you've raped people, if you've gone around raping 10 people, and obviously at this point, what he's trying to get is like, did you do it before you even came to the UK? He goes, no comment. So obviously, he's been doing it for a while. And the thing I think is like, this dude is probably his parents are probably higher up in the CCP. Because your average Chinese can't afford to leave the country. So if you're actually able to go overseas for this sort of level of education and being able to pay for it, you're either middle class or you're very well connected. So this guy's probably been doing this for a long time and been getting away with it back in China, because then he's like, yeah, I can get away with it doing it in the UK.
To drugging, raping, and videoing.
So yeah, hold on. So he's been drugging, raping, and videoing for a while.
Drugging, raping, and videoing these women.
还是你根本就停止不下来，做这样的事情？这些事情就是对这些女孩子，下药，然后对她们进行强奸。
No comments.
What's going on here? Okay.
Now, after seeing that, is there anything you want to tell me?
看了那一段影片，有什么话要说吗？
Can I have the conversation myself? Yeah, of course.
See, now he speaks English. It's all a joke. These fuckers, just like I said, they abuse the system and the kindness of Western countries, and they abuse the system. They have no they don't come with any sort of like, and I'm not saying all of them. All right, when we're saying this, I'm not saying all of them. This is a guy who basically has been raping people, doing this before, probably in China and wherever he's been. And now he's done 10 rapes in UK. Basically, he invites the girls over, drugs them, and then rapes them, and then records them raping them.
Can I have the conversation myself? Yeah, of course. This interview is paused. The time is 14:44.
So that's why I say, like, I have no fucking no shits given. Is that what it is? No shits given for migrants who commit crime overseas, who don't learn the language when they move here or anywhere in the West. If you don't learn the language of the land that you willingly came to, then why the hell you're there? If you don't learn the customs of the country you've come to live in for the rest of your life, I don't mind if you're just visiting and you don't have to learn the language and shit. But if you've come to live here, then you better learn the language or fuck off. Because how are you supposed to think? I hate like little closed off communities. I really do. I think because when you have closed communities, you can hide a lot of crime there and a lot of views, because it means that like you don't even know the law of the land. I've seen this happen, right? Where people who don't learn like what is like employee laws, right? Because we have very strict employment laws in New Zealand, and I've seen people get abused because they've stuck around their own little community. Even here in our city, there was a restaurant which is very high up, very like very well recognized, very, like probably about 3 stars, going on 4 stars, for years, for a decade, right? It was like top-notch restaurant. People like go to it. And then it got changed management. 2 Indian nationals from India took over, husband and wife. And then they brought in Indians from India and then took their passports, and then they underpaid them and then abused them. Like, okay, you have to work or you're not going to get paid, or, long hours and all this. And then because those dumb idiots didn't know anything about our laws, our employment laws, and they were kept in their little close-off, control, it took ages before they found out what was happening with them. That they were being abused, that they were having to do long hours, that they were not paid what the going rate was, and that their passports had been taken away by these Indian nationals who were managed, who had basically taken over who basically bought or whatever over the restaurant. So, and this is why I say I don't like closed off cultural communities, like, ethnic communities closed off, because a lot of shit can happen there without people being able to, and then it's a hushed up, right? Oh, don't let, or they'll see Indians or show the Chinese are being bad in their yeah. Well, if you don't root out the evil or the bad criminals in your community, how is the rest of your community going to think? Oh, and this is what happens like with like the Chinese community as well. Like there's a lot of in Auckland, there's a lot of what is it, triads running businesses. And so if you go to production, you got to pay to them, right? And this is what happens in these situations. That's why I don't like people coming in and living in other countries and not learning the culture and not learning the laws, because you're easily abused when you don't do that. Let's leave that there, and we'll move on to the mainstay. And it's an hour long, and we've already been 2 hours through this. Usually, it's been 2 weeks since we did this, so I thought maybe we'll take a long run at this. And this is, of course, Elica Le Bon, Iranian activist, writer, musician, right? An Iranian-American attorney. And this is from Trigonometry, and this was done 2 months ago. There are other interviews she's done and stuff, or podcasts, but I thought we'll go with Trigonometry because they're pretty cool. I think these guys are pretty onto it. So let's our main what is it called? Our main story of the day.
Hey, no, but seriously, really, buddy, friend, pal, you gotta trust me. Fine.
All right, let's do this. Did I get my full? No, I didn't go full. There. All right, let me move this across a bit more, and let's try to get this back screen. I'm just going to do a bit of editing, guys. Let me just. Here we go. Get this bigger so you guys don't have to see me so small. I mean, screen so small, I should say. Do this on the fly. There we go. Let's move me up. Let's get me smaller. There we go. All right. Update. Okay. This is, of course, the real reason is Iran wants to destroy it. And this is from an Iranian, right? So,
After October 7th happened, I'm like, okay, well, these are proxies of the regime. These are the same terrorists that have killed my family and my people. Obviously, I'm not going to stand with this. What people in the West seek to do is that they try to rationalize fundamentalism. They think that there's like a cause and effect to fundamentalism. They don't understand that fundamentalism is just insanity.
So this is a religious fundamentalist ideology that believes that in order to achieve the prophecy, it has to get rid of Israel. And these guys are trying to develop nuclear weapons. That's pretty scary. Elica, I've been following you.
And she's correct on that, right? Like, I've been around fundamentalists, right? I've actually kind of, at one point, was pretty fundamentalist, right? Until I left. And on a certain another level, right, or different thing. A lot of people don't know what the Quran says. To break it down, the Quran says that every Christian, every non-believer, that means me, who doesn't even believe in anything, right, doesn't follow any religion, and you, and Jews who don't believe anything, or are a Jew, or Israeli, or a Christian, or a Hindu, or a Baha'i, or a Muslim, Mormon, or a Jehovah's, you all need to either become a Muslim or you die. That is what the Quran says. And so these people who believe that, all right, hardcore, like I said at the start of the intro, these are the hardcore IRGC, which is Iranian ruling dictatorship, right? Who basically run Iran. And then there are the moderates, like her family, who just, want to live their life. But they can't, because the ones who rule them are into bringing around what quite possibly will be the end of the world, because unless you become Muslims and believe in their interpretation, which is what the Quran says, right? I was going to say Bible, but what the Quran says, which is that until every unbeliever is dead, until every, and I'm not paraphrasing. Oh, well, I am paraphrasing, but that's basically what it says, right? Until every Jew, every Christian, every unbeliever is either a Muslim following Allah, or they're dead, then the world will come. Then paradise will come.
Well, not literally, been following you online for a while.
Oh, you haven't been actually following me?
No, I haven't been
you
stalking
haven't been stalking me?
No, I haven't.
Okay, all right.
Only because
That's good to know.
Only because I'm in London, you're in LA.
That's what every stalker would
We've
say,
been talking
yeah.
for a while. Your commentary is very interesting, actually. We wanted to have you on, first of all, to tell us your story, because that's very interesting, and then to talk about the Middle East, Iran, and so on. So who are you, and what's been your and your family's journey?
My family, like a lot of Iranians here in the diaspora, left around or after the revolution, or should I say the coup that happened in 1979 in Iran. I think most people are like somewhat familiar with the story.
I don't know that they are, actually.
Oh, okay. So you had, it was under the Shah's regime. The Shah was the king of Iran at that time. And then there was, well, actually, this is very, very relevant to the conversation, because there was a revolution, an uprising, I guess, that overthrew the Shah. But what people don't understand is that a lot of the same factions and the same elements that were involved in that movement are the same elements that are involved in what's going on now in the Middle East. So, and we can get into this. I don't want to get distracted, so we'll put a pause and come back to it. But it was the movement of the, it was that jihadist Marxist alliance, the Islamist leftist alliance, where these ideologies of communism were being taught in the universities in Iran, and they kind of had this, I guess what the alliance is based on is this idea.
So, isn't it interesting, like Marxism, leftist, communism aligned with Islam views, right? And they were being taught in the universities in Iran. So it was kind of like the breeding ground to allow, because that we should take control of ourselves, right? Like they did, like in the last couple of years and across the world, right? As we noticed, as we learned with Doge, right, with Musk and they're finding out about US aid, how they were trying to influence politically all the socialist movements around the world, or the communist leftist movements in other countries around the world, through US aid, like hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, being sent into specific groups of like anti-democratic, what is it called, like student body movements, right? You know, trying to like undermine the social cohesion of that country, right? A lot like they did. What was it, like they spent 36, I think it was 56 million in. We'll look at that video later at another time. Like there's specific numbers for each country. There was like $32,000 given to a trans comic creator in South America, like to create 32,000.
That the jihadists are.
That's by the way, that's US money, right? That's US taxpayer money just handed over to somebody in South America. And that's only one little bit.
Back to it, but it was the movement of the it was that jihadist Marxist alliance, the Islamist leftist alliance, where these ideologies of communism were being taught in the universities in Iran, and they kind of had this I guess what the alliance is based on is this idea that the jihadists are this kind of reactionary force that will come in and dismantle, you know, Western imperialism and capitalism, you know, so that the leftists align with them in that capacity. So basically the same thing happened there. The Islamists come in, and of course the communists, the Tudeh party, are the first people they kill. So that's how the Islamic Revolution came to Iran in 1979. My dad at the time.
Let me just go back on that. So you notice how she's saying that, like, the marrying of Islam and the left, right? And didn't we just see that in the last year or so, where you had people from the left, LGBT, queers for Palestine, and wearing like, you know, wearing the friggin' Hezbollah green and the Hamas friggin' white thing that's actually not even theirs. It's actually from I was watching this video about it from like the Traveling Clad. You can find out exactly what that, you know, the white cloth with all the patterns mean on it. It's actually nothing to do with Gaza or anything at all. But yeah, so you see all these people laughing for Palestine, for Gaza, for Hezbollah, for Hamas, for terrorism, promoting and agreeing with terrorism. The left. Isn't it weird? But hey, she said back in the 70s they were doing it, right? So it's nothing new to them. So the Muslim loves the Islamist Shia loves them to left. They love using them as idiots, right? What useful idiots.
At the time was in London. He was getting his PhD at Oxford.
Hold on, sorry. Let me go back there. It's talking about her dad and what he was doing at that time.
See, are the first people they kill. So that's how the Islamic Revolution came to Iran in 1979. My dad at the time was in London. He was getting his PhD at Oxford. So under the Shah's regime was sending out students, like the top university students, to be educated abroad, because it was like part of this kind of progressive movement, right? He was getting international studies and things like that to come back to Iran. So then the revolution happened in 1979, and I guess he had to drop out of Oxford because they cut off his bursary because there was a change of government. My mum and my mum's entire family was still in Iran at that time. So they kind of experienced firsthand everything that happened after the revolution. My mum told me, you know, they would like throw acid in women's faces if they weren't wearing the hijab. So pretty much immediately.
And this is why I in 2020 I got pissed off at Jacinda Ardern, the socialist prime minister at the time, as she promoted the wearing of hijab because she didn't know. She was uneducated, or willfully ignored the fact of what happens to women, Muslim women, and how they're forced into wearing it, or they get acid thrown into their faces, or they get beaten up. And here's them doing them in 1970 when they got into power. in Iran.
After the Islamic Republic came to Iran, after Khomeini came into power, they started enforcing, mandatory hijab, mandatory dress codes, and things like that. So there was a lot of dissidents. There was a lot of uprising against this new regime that people were like, oh, actually, we made a mistake. We don't want this. And so then there was like a huge crushing of dissent. So a lot of people were executed. A lot of my family members. My mom was in Evin prison briefly. My aunt was in Evin prison as well. So Evin prison is the notorious prison in Iran, where basically it's like the prison of no return, basically. And in the early 1980s, in the kind of nascent years of the regime, where it was like at its most brutal, they would have a row of hanged bodies lining the walkway at the entrance of the prison, so people would understand kind of what they were going into.
Remember, this is in 1970 Iran when the Islamists took over. I know some of this because we did a whole thing on about Iran and how much they hate women. Only a couple of months back, right? A couple of weeks back, I don't know. But we've got, we looked at that.
So my aunt was in prison, my mom's sister, and she was pregnant with my cousin. And her husband was also in prison. They ended up executing him. They let her go to give birth. My cousin now, she has epilepsy because they, fed her so much poison when she was in prison. And then eventually, my mom got really sick after that time. She got a medical visa to go to the UK. That's where she met my dad, who applied for asylum, became a British citizen, got married, brought her family over. We all lived together in a very dysfunctional household. I was born.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds so weird that people don't understand this, but you see pictures from Iran before the revolution. And it's literally like, if people are listening to this in America or in the UK, it's like you have your fairly progressive society, and then just there's a revolution, and suddenly you as a woman now have to wear a hijab or even a burqa or whatever, and you get beaten or killed if you don't. That's really what happened. It was like overnight, you went back a few centuries, basically.
Yeah. And I think, what a lot of people say was that it was in fact becoming so progressive that it was almost like a backlash or jihad-lash, to the amount of progress that the Shah was implementing. Like he had all of these reforms, like the white reform, where he was kind of rapidly progressing to the extent that he was putting women in high positions in government. It was like really developing. And so that, that was an affront to the kind of burgeoning Islamist movement that was in Iran and the Middle East at the time, where they were just like, oh, this is Western imperialism. Because, every semblance of progress or modernity or equality is Western imperialism to these people, right? So it was like, we need to get rid of this Western imperialism. We need to get rid of the cinemas and the bars and the equality for women and the right to exist and the right to, wear what you want and be in government. And we just need to replace it with this oppressive regime to oppose Western imperialism.
And isn't it great to hear how this is what the left aligns with now on the streets? Aligning with the Shia Muslims, lapping for Hamas. Yet, this is what, the outcome of that was. They basically turned back the clock decades, if not centuries, when it came to, so-called revolution, right? Imagine being so progressive that you're almost becoming the leader in the world on how to treat each other, how to treat women, how to give them leadership and stuff, which is faked by the DEI, right? The woke movement in the world, right now in the Western world, where it's like, well, it's just because you're a woman, you deserve to be that position, not because you are actually qualified for that. And here, right, they're putting people in places, women who were qualified for that. And of course, the misogynist Quran-led, because Quran's very misogynistic, right? Like, I mean, 100% very misogynistic, right? It's all about subjugating the female and keeping them under lock and key. It's really terrible. But yeah, that's what, that's what the left aligns themselves with now.
Why didn't the Shah crack down on this? Or did he try and then it didn't work?
No. His attitude was very much like, if the people don't want me, I'll go.
See, this is the thing I found very frustrating about this. Is that you're the ruler of the country, you're the king. Sure, I guess you're like the figurehead, and you're watching your country burn to the ground. You're watching everything you brought into power, into place, because that's what the people wanted. And then this new movement, so-called revolution, actually coup, as you said, that topples the system, the progressive system. I mean, don't the leftists love progression? But really, the Western idea of progression is actually regressive, right? And I've noticed this over the last 5 years as I've been paying attention to the whole changes in culture and stuff. Now, you're sitting there and, your whole family, you're the king, all right? You got lines that go back centuries, whatever. And you're watching this new movement or this new power that's been backed, right? And this is where it's very important, where this person, Khamenei, I always get his, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, is backed by US foreign intervention and coup, is now being used to topple a growing power in the Middle East, which is a progressive, liberal, democratic country, one of the finest of its kind at that point. All their people who show, leadership or intelligence are being paid to be educated overseas for free, scholarships, bursaries, right? So that they can go back home and advance and help their country. And suddenly your countries are getting empowered, these people, right? These religious nutcases are being empowered and funded by America in the 1970s. Okay, let me who was the president of USA in 1979, and what party? Because it's very important, right, to know who was in control, what their politics were, because they're all about regime change. And this is why I like, in the sense of what Trump and his new cabinet's doing. It's like, we don't want to be doing this shit anymore. We're not into regime change. You look after your own shit. We're not gonna force you to. We're not gonna come and create coups in your country like we've been doing for the last 60, 70 years. Because I've actually read this about all the coups and all the regime changes they've done in South America and Latin America for 60 odd years. All right. All the people that were killed with the CI backing of dictators and so on. Why is this taking so long? Come on, buddy. I'm trying to find who was in control. Hold on. Let me do a refresh. Maybe we got stuck. But yeah. So I'll play this while I find information there.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was actually very liberal in his.
He didn't fight to stay. He didn't fight to. But also, you have to remember that he was very sick. He was very sick at the time. He had cancer. And it's actually a very interesting story, the Shah's.
All right, got it. Guess who was in power? And guess which party was in power? So the party in power was the Democrats, who toppled Iran. Progressive, pretty left, center left, I reckon, you know, centrist government under the Shah. The Democrats with Jimmy Carter, who I think, if I remember right, they said he was like the worst president of all time, basically has blood on their hands just for what they did, in Iran with the CIA there. And this is why I like the fact that diplomacy is what Trump wants. He wants like no more wars, no more friggin' interfering in other countries. Stand on your own feet, run your own countries the way you want, and stop trying to use, stop reaching out to us to, topple your own governments. And a lot of people don't fucking know this, right? That America used its CIA to topple a progressive center-left government under the rulership of a Shah, who basically was letting their people do, progress the way everybody would want in the left, which is like equal for everybody, right? Equal rights for everybody. And education. A lot of my family, I didn't even know this until a few years later, probably until 2014, like a decade back, that a lot of my grandparents, right, or grand uncles were educated in New Zealand at universities here. Even before I was born, right? Because of scholarships that New Zealand was giving and Australia was giving to Fiji students, to brainy Fiji students, right? Smart kids, right? At high school. Then here, come over and learn at our universities and go back and help your country. But there's Democrats and Jimmy Carter using the CIA to topple another country.
Illness. They've made multiple documentaries about it. So he's basically hopping from country to country because he's being kicked out of every country after he left Iran. And that was because Khomeini from Iran was calling upon the Ummah. I don't know if you know what the Ummah is.
No, explain.
It's like this concept of a one collective Muslim body. So, we as Muslims are all kind of moving together at the same time. So when the Shah's in Egypt or Morocco, wherever he is, the Ummah needs to rise up and have him removed. Mm-hmm. So because it was causing so much problems wherever the Shah would go.
So basically the Shah, the king of Iran, stepped down because America backed Khomeini, the Islamist, got in control. And then they started canceling the Shah because he was ill. So he said, okay, I'll step down. You guys can do what the fuck you want, right? Run the country the way you want, whatever the way the people want. And I'm just going to go try to get healthy because I'm quite ill. But they canceled him from country to country because, like you said, the Ummah, if he goes to Morocco, well, he's canceled there. He can't get aid, right? He can't get medical treatment. He goes to Pakistan, can't get it there. So his
like the Ummah was rising up in Egypt, and where he was being housed, and he would have to go. So then he was going to America, to Morocco, Egypt, all different places. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that he needs to do this surgery on his spleen, and he has the best doctor in America do this surgery, the best spleen surgeon in America. Now, at this time, let's rewind and talk about the fact that Jimmy Carter, who was the president of the USA at that time, betrayed the Shah, who was a close ally to Carter. And he betrayed the Shah by kind of conspiring with Khomeini to bring this revolution to Iran and to overthrow the Shah. And this was revealed in declassified documents that were produced in 2016 that revealed this correspondence between Khomeini and the White House, where Carter agreed to basically suppress the Iranian army and to help disseminate this propaganda against the Shah that ultimately fermented this revolution. So just keeping that in mind, because
so all the terror since 1979 that the world has faced, Islamist terror, is all because of fucking Jimmy Carter and the Democrat Party. Because that's where it all started. 1979. Just want to let you know.
And I don't know how much of a conspiracy theorist we want to be about this. I think it's just open to consider. The Americans really didn't want the Shah to survive and ultimately potentially come back to Iran. So he undergoes this spleen surgery by apparently the best spleen surgeon in the USA at the time, but the surgeon doesn't drain his spleen. And then when you do all of these documentaries, when you see all these documentaries, you have these surgeons from everywhere, from Mexico, here, there, and the other. They're like, there's no such thing as not draining the spleen after a surgery. You would get an infection and die. Everybody knows this. That's exactly what happened to him. He got an infection and he died.
So we fast forward to 2024. What is life like in Iran now for the average person and for women in particular?
I mean, for women in particular, it's obviously extremely oppressive. It's extremely repressive. You have this forced dress code, this forced hijab, but you know, the situation with the hijab, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. You know, the degree of oppression and repression in Iran is so severe that that's really just like the veneer on top of all of it. You know, you have a lack of political autonomy. The economy is in ruin because of all the sanctions that have been placed on the regime, because it's constant violations over the decades. You have no ability to oppose the regime because they kill you, torture you, rape you, and you can't even vote meaningfully because every candidate is handpicked by the supreme leader. And so I always just refer to the state of Iran now after the Islamic regime came into power as just that it just went black. You know, like everything shut down and there's just no life there. There's just like no life.
But bearing that in mind, there have been very brave people, brave women who have stood up. So that gives me hope, because it makes me think that actually there are people pushing back. Like this student, that story is incredible. Tell it to our students.
So this is the I did the stream about what, you know, the treatment of women in Iran, right, and in Islam. So this is the links there in the chat. You guys can check out later. Thought I'd just put that up so you guys can see that. The title is the barbarism is 14th century, right? We look at Iran and that and how that came to be and so on, really concentrating on like just hateful women, right? The misogynistic treatment of women in Iran and, well, in Islam. And I think that was just part one. Was that classed as part one? I think so. I think that we got more coming up on that, but I'm concentrating more on the boys at the moment. So we've got a part 2 of Basi Bachi, which is Bacha Bashi, which is like boy play or child play, and this abuse of children, abuse of boys in Islam. All right. So let me just go back a bit to what Konstantin was, not Konstantin. Here we go.
But bearing that in mind, there have been very brave people, brave women who have stood up. So that gives me hope, because it makes me think that actually there are people pushing back. Like this student, that story is incredible. Tell it to our listeners and viewers who might have missed it.
So last week, there was a woman whose name is Ahu Daryai, and she was essentially accosted by the morality police for not wearing her hijab correctly. She was a PhD student in at a university in Iran.
Elica, sorry,
Yes.
you've just used morality police. People might not be aware of that. Who are the morality police?
Okay, so the morality police in Persian, Gashte Ershad, they are the police that are specifically employed for ensuring that women comply with the dress code. There was a period of time that the media was reporting that the morality police had disbanded, which was not true. They had moved to kind of surveillance instead of patrol, but I guess they're back on patrol again. So in response to being accosted by the morality police, she decides to take off not just her hijab, but all of her clothes. She decides to undress.
So yeah, we looked at that and that the actual footage of that and that yeah, in the stream here, the links there in the chat. All right, in detail.
And just roam around in the streets in her underwear, basically, which is, you know, a lot of people would say is like a suicidal mission, but she did this in defiance of the regime.
And what would happen to a woman like that who chose to protest, not only to protest, but protest in the most explicit manner?
So what they're basically already saying is that she's been forcibly institutionalized. And the Amnesty actually reported today that they are aware of the tactics that the regime has used when they forcibly institutionalize.
No, this is from 2 months ago, right?
Women for defiance of the hijab laws, which can include like electric shocks, forced drugs, intravenous drugs.
So this is what really pisses me about the left, because they muddy the water. They don't really understand what Islam does. Oh, you know, well, you know, Israel deserves this or that, you know, whatever, because of this and that. But they never actually look at what Islam really is. And, you know, I'd rather just let people tell you what it is or show you what it is. And you can make up your own bloody mind about it, right? That's the whole point of this channel.
Just stuff that you would think of when you think of like the early 1900s of, you know, what they used to do to women for hysteria, which involved a lot of the same things like electroconvulsive therapy, ice baths, lobotomies, even in the extreme cases. And so there's a lot of concern right now about, you know, what the regime is doing in response to that.
Elica, let's talk a little bit about what the regime wants, because this is something that people in the West
And by the way, not just adult women, young girls as well. So we're talking about children here as well, who are treated through this.
Don't think people in the West are capable of understanding the mindset of passionately, deeply religious people, which is who runs Iran.
Yeah.
So what do they want? Well, what is their objective? Why are they doing many of the things they're doing? The elections happened, but many questions remain.
Okay, let's jump ahead. Past Ed.
You know, I think you bring up a good point, because what I often find about what people in the West seek to do is that they try to rationalize fundamentalism. So they come up with these stories like, well, you know, I guess if, you know, America did this, then obviously they would do that.
Yeah,
they
what
think
about
there's
Islam?
like a cause and effect to fundamentalism. They don't understand that fundamentalism is just insanity. Like there's no why, there's no reason. It is what it is, and there's no rationalizing it. So they're kind of imputing their own rationality onto fundamentalism, which just fundamentally doesn't work.
I get why they do it, by the way, especially as we're sitting here in LA. You look outside, it's the sun is shining, you know, all you need to do is make money and live. Why would anyone go and blow themselves up? Well, they must be really annoyed, they must be really upset,
Yeah.
they must have a good, you know,
Yeah.
I would only blow myself up if
Mm.
blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a failure of imagination.
It's also just a failure to understand like true evil in
Yeah.
like people don't think that it's possible to just be evil. They don't.
As a writer, right? As someone who, you know, who creates characters for a living, right? And writing about good, you know, decent characters, decent human beings, or whatever, you know, whatever character I'm writing, if it's a real life character, you know, like someone normal, average day person, or a superpowered being, or someone, you know, some demon or something or whatever, right? I got infused with them into some sort of morality and a compass, a moral compass, or a lack of a moral compass. And I got to create a background that turns them into or brings out whatever their character brings out or needs to bring out. Case in point, the comic that I'm writing right now, all right, for someone, all right, someone else. The character has to have a change in him or in them to go from being just nobody to being an evil, benevolent character or what have you, right? Because the character is some sort of super being, right? Or not super being, but alien force, right? Alien thing. And existing on a, you know, kind of like, say, alien planet and an alien situation. However, I need to make this character get to where it needs to make it realistic how they get there. And a lot of people don't have an imagination as to how people, like she's saying, how people become evil, why people become evil, why they do crime. And so they, when they see someone committing crime, oh, it's because the society has made them do that. Or it's not, or because it's the government has kept them down. You know, that whole fucking systematic racism thing. Yeah, sometimes it does happen, but not all the time. Right? And this is why I'm all for individual responsibility. Yes, outside effects can influence that. And yeah, as a storyteller, I have to use that outside influences to put it on that whoever my character is. And then I have to give my character to react how that character has to react, either for good or for evil or whatever. And this is why I think the left has gotten to a point where they have lost all imagination about reality, right? They change the meaning of words. So it doesn't mean the same thing that they say it means, right? And because of that, they have lost their understanding of reality and how to face or have conversation without having to kill each other, without discourse. But they're okay with someone blowing themselves up, because in their mental brain, they can't equate evil as evil. And this is why when we look at like the characters that how they've been changing in the comic scene, because you know I'm in the comics industry, and how they make, oh, you know, it's because of society that person's evil now. He's not really evil. It's because how things are. It's like, so the characters don't have any meaning. The villains don't have any meaning. Right? And so people just don't watch those because like, what does it matter? Right? Comics are about good versus evil. Yes, there are gray areas. Yes, there's anti-heroes. But in the end, it's a moral stories you're trying to teach young kids, especially young boys, because that young boys are who get into superhero comics, right? And this is why nobody fucking wants to read those stories that Marvel and DC are putting out, because there's nothing in there to learn. It's not entertaining enough to be able to be educated by it. And the education they're trying to tell you is a leftist moral idea that like there's no such thing as evil. Why do people kill each other? Oh, it's because the society made them do that. Oh, it's because they're poor. Well, why are they alcoholic? Oh, because government. Or because, you know, that's all they have. No, it's because that's what they want, because it's escapism for them. But, well, why do we have to rely on the government to feed our children at school? Shouldn't we have responsibility? No, it's a government's responsibility to feed our children at school, so that I can spend my money on drugs and alcohol, so I can go spend it at the nightclub. Because I've seen that happen. But no, it's everybody else's fault but mine to take responsibility for my actions and my children's actions. So there's no the left has no understanding of good and evil, right? Because they've muddied the waters.
Think like they're like, but I wonder why Hitler does that. I'm sure he was just abused, and I'm sure but he was just evil, you know. Like, just give up looking for the why, because sometimes people are just bad people who do bad things.
So come back to what they want, because one of the things that might be strange to people who are familiar with them,
it's like rationalizing why people do things, right? And to a point where it's lost all meaning. It just annoys the hell out of me as someone who's a writer who actually tries to get into the heads of characters, because there's nothing worse when there's a character so shallow, right? That you got to give them motives and so they can act and react. And the worst characters are ones with, where the writer wants to tell you something that you know is wrong. Right, wants you to believe something that inherently you understand as being wrong, but they want to change your thinking about that, right? And they want to force you into, accepting it. But we know inherently in ourselves what's right and wrong.
Middle East is Iran is very far away from Israel, right? So their objective and their desire to wipe Israel off the map, which is one of their objectives, seems to a lot of people kind of difficult to understand. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So basically, Iran, there's two types of Islam. There's Shia Islam and Sunni Islam. The regime in Iran subscribes to 12 Shia Islam. So the reason it's called 12 Shia Islam is because they believe that the descendants of the original prophet Muhammad is not the correct lineage of the prophets. It's of his son-in-law and cousin. So the 12th Imam, which was Prophet Mahdi. So there's this theory called Mahdiism. This Prophet Mahdi was said to have gone into occultation. So he went into hiding around 937 CE. So he's gone into hiding, he's gone into occultation, and the theory is that the final prophet emerges once there is once justice and equality has been achieved in the world. And the thing that achieves this justice is that the last drop of blood of Israel falls. So the end of Israel.
Can you understand that? Do you get that? To the 12 Shia Islamists, justice is only achieved when every single Jew is dead or Israeli is dead. That's genocide. Yet the clown-faced leftist think that's all, it's Israel shouldn't defend itself, they're the ones who are causing all the problem. Yet this is what they believe. And what they want to achieve, by the way, which is why they continue to fund terrorism and to attacking Jews everywhere, not just in Israel, everywhere, not just in the Middle East, everywhere, even in Australia, just across the ditch from us.
Israel brings back the final prophet.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've never heard this. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
So it's a religious thing. It's a
It
prophecy
is.
thing.
Yeah.
So they need to destroy Israel.
They need to destroy Israel, correct. So that's
for
why
the prophecy to be fulfilled.
Exactly. So that's why that's now how you get into the proxies of the regime, right? So you have the regime almost immediately after the regime comes into power so it comes into power in 1979. Within the next 2 years, between that 1981, they create Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is essentially a second IRGC, which was created for the purpose of destroying Israel from the closest possible border. Because as you said, Iran's not close enough to Israel to be able to accomplish that. So they were like, okay, let's take Lebanon. Let's put an army of the IRGC in Lebanon, which is
what
the
is the
border of Israel.
IRGC? Sorry.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guardian Corps.
Okay.
So this is okay. So the system in Iran is like this. You have a regular government, which is, for all intents and purposes, just symbolic because it's under the so you have the supreme leader. The system is called Velayat Faqih. You have the supreme leader, and underneath the supreme leader, you have the IRGC, which protects the supreme leader. And then you have the regular government, which is parliament, judiciary, and executive, the president. But all of these are under the rule of the supreme leader. So the IRGC essentially protects this system of Velayat Faqih, the supreme leader system. So the second IRGC is created in Lebanon, which is Hezbollah. So after the revolution is successful, Assad comes to Iran to congratulate Khomeini and says, what do you need? And Khomeini says, we need a passage to Lebanon to create this second army to destroy Israel. So they go through Syria, and they come down in northern Lebanon. At the same time, this is like around the same time that, remember, Israel's now in southern Lebanon. And this is why the Western world often says that Hezbollah was created in response to Israel's occupation. Well, that's completely false. First of all, Israel was occupying the south of Lebanon at the time to remove the PLO that were throwing rockets into Israel. And in fact, the Lebanese in the south were actually allying with Israel to help take out the PLO, the SLA. Hezbollah's coming down in the north, and it's basically killing everybody who's not submitting to their rule. Even Shiites, even Shiite Muslims, Sunnis, Christians, basically everyone.
Remember, there is two forms of, two sects, two sides of Islam. Shiites, right, which is the Iranian, hardcore, militant, and then the Shia, which is a more moderate, kind of like you could say the peace-loving, and which is why everybody muddies Islam as like the religion of peace, right? But here, right, here you've got you basically got the Shiites killing their fellow Muslims, right? The Sunni and anybody else.
In fact, the Lebanese in the south were actually allying with Israel to help take out the PLO, the SLA. Hezbollah's coming down in the north, and it's basically killing everybody who's not submitting to their rule. Even Shiites, even Shiite Muslims, Sunnis, Christians, basically everyone. They start engaging in a series of terrorist attacks, bombing the American embassy in Beirut, kidnapping Americans, killing them. Then it goes into like the kind of Iran-Contra.
But remember, this is all because of Jimmy Carter, the president of the US, and the Democratic Party. This is how it all started. Like I said, they have blood on their hands.
Affair, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Anyway, the whole point is that this regime creates its proxies in order to start satisfying its goal, which is the destruction of Israel. And that's how it ends up also funding and providing training and assistance to Hamas and the Houthis, basically all in furtherance of the same goal.
So I'm guessing that they don't really particularly care, the Iranian regime, which is funding all these proxies, about civilian casualties.
It's not just that they don't care, it's that they need civilian casualties. It's part of the propaganda machine. So you can't turn Israel into a pariah state, right? Which is the goal, that everyone thinks this is the most evil state in the world, unless Israel its hand is forced into striking areas where they've put, munitions in schools and in hospitals and places like that, right? So that it's actually part of their strategy to maximize civilian casualties. And in fact, this was something that they read in Sinwar's, a leaked report of something that Sinwar had even admitted himself, that they need as many civilian casualties as possible. Because when they have civilian casualties, then the rest of the world is like, Israel's evil, we need a ceasefire, we need to end all of these things. And then Hamas lives to see another day.
The thing that I find really interesting about all of this is that Biden gave Iran a lot of money. Now, I don't understand why that is. Could you explain the amount of money that he gave?
Yeah.
And there must have been a rationale behind it.
Yeah.
So what was the rationale?
So in August of 2023, about 2 months before the October 7th, Biden ends up giving $6 to $7 billion to the regime as part of a prisoner exchange deal, where you get a couple of Iranians from American prison and a couple of Americans from Iranian prisons. Now, we've done these prisoner exchanges in the past without any transfer of money. So under the prior government, under Trump, they got back 2 American prisoners, Shi Wei-Wang and Michael White, with no exchange of money. So this was very curious. We were like, why are you giving them $7 billion? Mind you, they also didn't retrieve one American national, Jamshid Sharmad, who, I don't know if you heard about this, they executed him last week. This is a man that the regime had kidnapped. He was a dissident to the regime, like the rest of us. They tried to assassinate him in California in 2009, and when they failed, they kidnapped him from Dubai, took him to Iran. Biden's administration didn't try to get him back, and then they ended up executing him last week after Israel struck the regime's military bases. So first of all, we're like, why are you giving them money? Second of all, why aren't you bringing them all back? So then what we end up finding out is that you have this lead negotiator in Qatar come out and basically say, these are like laying the ground for getting back into the second JCPOA, which is to get back into another nuclear deal with the regime.
So we're going to be looking at Qatar in an upcoming stream. And Qatar is just as despicable as Iran, like the regime, IRGC, right? Ali Khamenei, just as despicable. And like really, really bad.
Which was what Obama did, if you recall, gave $150 billion to the regime to get into the JCPOA, the nuclear deal.
And so what?
Isn't it interesting that the Democrats keep giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Iran, then which they use to kill people because they buy weapons of like mass destruction. I mean, like missiles, grenades, right? And bombs that then is used against everybody else. Majority against, Israel, but everybody else around the world. Fucking Democrats, man. Like, seriously, they're the most evil friggin' party that I can think of when it comes to the US. And I'm not saying that Republicans don't have a part in some of this, but the warmongering and regime toppling has been in the hands of majority, high percentage than anybody else, right? Than Republican. And I still don't like the two-party system, all right? But has been Democrats.
What does that mean to get into the nuclear deal? Because there will be people who go, look, you've got 2 choices with these regimes. You either isolate them and then they go into the arms of Russia, China, whatever else, or you try and work with them and hopefully bring them into the fold, and then that way you can have soft power over. You're smiling.
Yeah,
you think it's clearly bollocks.
It's 45 years of a failed strategy of appeasement. And they tried the same thing with the Nazi regime, and they appeased for so long that they ended up having to kill 50 million people to take them out for just delaying the inevitable. So that's exactly what Obama thought. He was like, oh, maybe if we just give them $150 billion, they'll stop committing terrorism and suddenly start liking us. And it's like, what part of terrorist regime do you not understand? They want you gone. They want you dead. And they're trying to strategize every way they can to pull one over on you. So that's exactly what happened. They got into this nuclear deal, which didn't do anything, mind you, because the provisions of the nuclear deal expired after 10 years anyway. So they could then enrich to their heart's content, and they had $150 billion. And at that time, there was actually another revolution in Iran, the Green Movement, and the regime was on its last legs. And they ended up empowering the regime once again, and Obama comes out a few years later and he's like, oh, you know what? I made a huge mistake. I should have stood with the people of Iran to help them take out the regime. But that was what they believed at the time. They thought diplomacy would...
Yeah.
So we're going to leave that there. We're at 3 hours, but I think we'll come back to this. And like I said, man, the Democrats, right? Gotta love the Democrats. Like, warmongering, feeding terrorists, housing terrorists, weaponizing terrorists with billions and billions of US dollars. And suddenly Trump gets back in second time, and gets in first time, goes, no more wars. And then they do what they do, like propaganda against him, arrest him, take him into court. Oh yeah, for about, all that time, waste his time, rather than him going out there thing. Oh, and then also when he starts, getting out there, doing speeches, they try to take him out. But then anyway, the huge, people see, all right, the US people see. The citizens see what's going on. And they say, well, why do they want to kill him so much? I mean, why? What is up? And now that he's in, we see again what they've been doing. Regime change, right? Trying to topple governments, democratically elected governments. Trying to put in dictators, because then you'll get rights to the minerals, you get the rights to the resources, right? South America get the oil, right? You get the minerals, emeralds, all that. Africa, you get the diamonds. But hey, Trump's a bad guy, right? I hope, the weird thing is you can't make, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's basically leftists right now. All those people that have been voting for, Democrats all these years, even, they just don't want to open their eyes and look past what that 5-minute vox pop, as we used to call it, the man on the street, whatever, giving their opinion. And it's always like, oh yeah, he's a bad guy, or getting someone who really hates them because that's not their party, and all they got to say is, oh, he's a bad man. And even in New Zealand, like right now, there are mainstream papers saying how bad Trump is for putting Zelensky in his place and saying, you either work with diplomacy or we won't help you. You either put an end to this war and come to the table and agree to a peace deal, or we're not going to help you. Hundreds of billions of dollars have gone into keeping this war going. Now, if everybody pulled out their money, stopped paying for that, the war will be over right now in Ukraine. Because money feeds the war machine, right? The war pigs, right? As you know, if you listen to songs of war pigs, and also B.O.B., why do they always send the poor? It's a good way to cull the poor, right? The poor, because usually it's the street kids, it's the kids in the urban areas who can't get a job. They sign up to the military to get an education. And guess what? They're the first ones to go out to the front line. So hundreds of thousands of kids are dying, and young people are being pulled off the streets because the older ones are dead now in Ukraine. But Zelensky's like, no, we got to keep this war machine going. The forever war. Just keep giving me money and I'll win this for you. Dude, your people are dying. You've been at this for what, 3 years now? When are you going to stop and realize that, like, hey, man, maybe this is not good for us? Our civilians are dying every day. And if our men are all dead, what's our future going to look like? See, this is why I hate warmongers. And I found, like, in the last few years that leftists have become the warmongering side. The socialists have become the warmongers. But hey, I was wrong. It's been that way for a long time. Because Democrats are leftists, and Democrats basically toppled freaking Iran. Obama did it as well. You know, like she said, the regime was going to end, but then he gave them $150 million. And they were able to get back on top again. And so Democrats again keep empowering Iran to continue being in power, to ruin their country, to oppress their people, and torture them. While Democrats just kept handing them billions to do so. So yeah, Biden gave them $7 billion. The last 4 years, yeah. Okay, so we will come back and we'll look at the rest of the. Actually, you know what? No, we won't. You guys can check out the rest of it for yourselves, because, like, you know, we got the core of it. We know why they want to kill every single Jew, because that's what's written in their religion. You know, that every single blood of must until the last drop of Israeli blood is finished, then their prophet, their religion, their paradise won't come. So there's a link there for the rest of that. Rest of this video clip we're looking at, the real reason. You know, we only got through like probably almost half of it, but it's like 35 minutes is there. But do check it out. You know, it is a good, and do check out Elica, because she's got lots of really cool, interesting, she does also, there's another one I wanted to bring up, but I'll give you the link for that. You guys can check it out for the next time around. But here's something I want to like finish off with, and then we'll finish off. So, and this is a Syrian, right? You had an Iranian talk, because these are people that live in the Middle East. These are Middle Eastern people, right? Because like, well, we should let the people tell you what, and their voices. We must hear from them. So let's hear from them, and we'll finish up with this. And nope. There we go. Perfect. All right. So this is Syrian activist to UN. I testify before God. She's a devout lady. Also say religious lady. Israel is not the problem. And this is, I will finish up with this.
Are you outraged with the war in Gaza? So am I. My name is Rawan Osman. I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese. Since October 7th, I visited Israel 9 times, and I want to testify before God and you, Israel is not the problem. Last week, Israel buried Shiri Bibas with her children Ariel and Kfir. Hamas said they had been arrested. Forensic reports show they were choked to death in Gaza. But many who point fingers at Israel might do better to look in the mirror. I asked Qatar, why didn't you arrest the Hamas chiefs in Doha and demand release of the hostages? Why did you finance terror? And I asked Iran, why do you send billions to Hamas and Hezbollah instead of liberating your own people who are suffering oppression and poverty? Egypt, You charged Gazans thousands of dollars to escape the war. How can you lecture about the morality of displacing Gazans? Jordan, why have you refused to accept any Gazans? Are they not your own people? Lebanon, instead of discussing Hezbollah's political role, ban the party. Syria, if the new president is sincere about his transformation, I ask him to return the body of Eli Cohen. It's been 6 decades. Allow his wife to bury him before she dies. Hamas abuses dead bodies. Be a better Arab. Be a better Muslim. Thank you.
All right, that's us. We'll see you next time, and I'll try to get my schedule proper. But as I said, like I got so many projects I'm working on, and I'll try to, But thank you guys for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Wherever you are, be well, be safe. Hug your family, give them a kiss, whatever. Send them a message of love. But we'll catch you next time. Kakite ano, wherever you are. Be safe.
Nope. Can't stay here anymore. I gotta get back. I think this was the spot. Oh Lord, I beseech thee, please return me to my old life. I swear I'll do anything. Like, literally anything. And I won't bother you again, so pretty please bring me back to life.